against a great national team of players, and then struggled some yesterday. So we're back at it today in bracket play, but we did not make the top bracket, so that's a kind of a bummer. But uh, try to make the most of it, and then regroup. We've got some guys a little bit worn out. This is tough. This
Yeah.
is they play so many games, and they're so young. Some guys' arms are a little tired. You can't push it, right? You can't push through. This is not the World Series, so you're just trying to get better and do the best you can.
This is the
But
grind, man.
we're having fun. Yeah, this is well. That's what you have to do. You have to remember to have fun, even when you have a tough day at the field, like we did yesterday. We got swept in a doubleheader, but they're 15. They're going to have some days like that. It's
Sure.
just one of those things.
No doubt about it. We decided to pack up kind of last minute. Well, it wasn't last minute. We made the decision last week. I don't remember exactly what day it was. Probably the middle of the week. You know what? Let's go to Atlanta. We have the weekend. The city of Smyrna was doing their fireworks Friday night. We're like, okay, because that's usually where we'll gather with several of the baseball families, and we did again on Friday night. So we got to hang out at the Smyrna fireworks show. Then ended up at Stonecrest Hospital. Not because Maddox lost any fingers, but he did break his pinky finger. So there was that. So that was fun. We knew we were going to Atlanta, so we're like, we probably need to get this checked out. And one of the kids on the team had recently just broke his pinky too. And his mom was looking at it Friday night and looking at us. Because I was like, suck it up, Buttercup. You're fine. You're not even complaining about it. You can't really move it, but you're fine, man. There really wasn't any bruising. It was swollen. No doubt. There was some swelling going on. I was like, we'll put some ice on it. You'll be fine. And she was like, yeah, I think this looks exactly like what Titus did. You probably need to get it checked out, especially if you're going out of town. I think he's broke his pinky too. And I was like, uh-oh. So I was like, well, tell me the symptoms. What happened? And so she went through the checklist, and it was like, oh, yeah, okay. I guess it is broken. So we went straight to the hospital after the fireworks show. And yeah, he had broken his pinky, so
I saw
fractured
he had
his
the
pinky.
tape. I saw the tape on the hand. The pictures you guys posted
Yeah.
from the ballpark there.
Yeah, he fractured his pinky, so we'll be heading to the orthopedic doctor first thing tomorrow morning. But he's fine. But just having to deal with that, we didn't want to go out of town, and I'm glad we did. So we got up Saturday morning after getting home very late from the hospital. And we headed down. We were going to go to the College Football Hall of Fame, but obviously that had to be scrapped since we got home so late, and he was on some medication that was going to have him sleep for a while. So we got a much later start because we knew he was going to sleep in. He was going to be out of it, and that's exactly how it played out. So unfortunately on this trip we didn't get a chance to go to the College Football Hall of Fame. That's okay. We'll do it. We'll do it another time. I don't think it's going anywhere. Last time I checked, I don't think that place is going anywhere, but I've heard great things about it, so we want to do that. It just didn't happen on this trip. So Sunday, they played the Braves played a 120 game, got down there early, hung out with our boy Chris Domino before he went on his pregame show, showed me their 680 studios, Willie. Not too shabby.
Really?
Not too bad. Very nice.
I'm trying to
Very
think
nice.
if I've been there. I feel like I've been there one time before.
Do you know where they are? It's directly
I
across the street from Truist Park. They're staring at
okay.
Truist
I have not
Park.
been there. I have definitely not been there then.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
looking in from their conference room and their radio. They're looking at Truist Park, the Omni, the Comcast building. I mean, that's what they're looking at. Not bad, right, on the fourth floor. And then we went to the game, and they were going to let they let the kids run. Like Sounds do the same thing on Sunday games. They let the kids run the bases after the game, and that was the case for the Braves game. And it's like, okay, we had found out that some of our baseball families were down there as well. Ironically, we did not converge on this. We didn't talk about it. We're sitting in 215. One family's sitting in 216. Another family's sitting in 218. I mean, we were like all right there together, and it just, I mean, what's the? Can you believe that? What's the odds that would actually happen in that big stadium. But so we all decided we were going to go let the boys run the bases afterwards, right? Like, of course. And there's 4 kids from the team. And so you have to go down, and they put you basically in the basement of Truist Park. I mean, you're just staring at concrete walls. Us and like 1,000 other kids and their families. And, the good news is if a tornado would have cropped up like when I was sitting in the Georgia Dome at the SEC basketball tournament, man, we would have been in great shape. We wouldn't have to do anything. We're underground. We got concrete walls. We're fine. Problem is there was no tornado. That's not a problem. That's a good thing. But there was no tornado warnings yesterday or Sunday. The Braves were coming back. They were down 7-3, and it looked like the game was in cruise control. The Marlins were going to win 7-3. Okay, and then the boys are going to get to run the bases. No, Willie, the Braves decided to do the epic comeback while we sat and had to listen to the whole thing along with 1,000 other kids and families.
Oh, my gosh. So you didn't get to – was there a monitor? Could you see it at all?
No.
Oh, no.
We're down in the basement surrounded by concrete walls on a ramp. We could hear it.
So you could hear the audio?
Right. Well, we whipped out our phones. Obviously, everybody's whipping out their phones, and we're able to watch, but it's delayed big time. It's a good, 60-second delay.
Okay. So you're hearing the crowd rumbling.
And it's not right. And
something's going on. Something's going on.
The guy just stepped out of the batter's box, and you're hearing the crowd roar. It's like, what? What's going on? Oh, that's right. We're 60 seconds behind. Something good's about to happen. So I looked at everybody when the Braves were coming back, and I said, man, I'm sorry, guys, but I hate to break it to you. I just know how this works. They're going to extra innings, okay? They're going to tie it up, and we're going to be stuck down here. We had been down there. It was the longest inning. The game was cruising. When we went down, Willie, it was on pace to be a 2-hour and, 35-minute game, 30-minute game, maybe 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Cruising.
Take that every time. Yeah.
Right. And we get down there, and that last inning goes on forever. The 9th inning, was about 4 innings when we were sitting in our seats. Of course, the one inning that we're not watching goes on forever. And, of course, they tied it up, and they didn't win it. And then, of course, you start with the runner at second, which is always interesting.
Right. Well, thank goodness for you, or else you could have been there for hours.
I was so happy for that rule. I wanted to speed this thing up. So, yes, the Braves get the 8-7 victory after it was the pitcher, Max Fried, not Fried. That's what we had to tell the boys because they were like, Fried's up. And I was like, Fried. I was like, I know it looks like Fried. Max Fried came up and pinch hit and got the hit. How about that? The pitcher wins it at the plate, and the Braves win. So, and then we got to go down, and it kind of stunk on one hand. Lesson learned. One, we would never go down there again because they were letting people in. They were at the end of the line. Who cares, right? And so we would never do that again. There's no advantage to being earlier in line. Yeah, there's no advantage other than they tell you to. You have to. They don't really mean it. They don't really, but we're out of towners. We just have to listen to what they're telling us. And, it's cool to go down there. We take pictures on the field. Well, they don't let you get on the grass. So you basically walk around the warning track, which is cool. And then, of course, they got to run the bases. So all in all, it was a lot of fun. Chase would have been happy.
That's for their customer service. Yeah, that's for their customer service. Let them know. Put a TV monitor in the area and for the waiting so the kids can see the game. Come on.
I know.
They got monitors all over that stadium. Just put one more there in the waiting area.
How hard is it to put some TVs down there in that area? Yeah.
That's
but
a
also,
great story.
how many people stand down there and epic comebacks?
I know, but Maddox will probably have great memories of that. Remember when we went to the Braves game? They had a great comeback, and we didn't see it. But they'll always remember running those bases, though. That's for sure.
Well, everybody was down in the dumps, and that was my way of trying to pick everybody up. I was like, hey, guys, just think of it this way. And this was with everybody. I was like, we'll have a story to tell, okay? Right. We'll have a story to tell the rest of our lives. Remember when the Braves won? We were staring at concrete walls, the bottom floor of Truist Park.
Wow.
Look on the bright side.
What you see, too, when you get on that field is what a beautiful playing surface.
Oh, yeah.
It is. it's so every year they get better and better at just perfecting. It's not artificial turf, but it might as well be, right? You rarely see bad hops anymore.
Yeah.
If you think back, if you like to watch an old game at the old Cleveland Stadium or the old service at Dodger Stadium, pick a park. They just weren't as good back then at knowing how to keep it from having bad hops. You would see bad hops all the time. Bad hop
Yeah.
single was part of it. You just don't see very many of those now because bad hops don't happen as much.
Yeah. No, you're right about that.
It's just pristine.
These fields are immaculate. I mean, they're just unbelievable. I mean, it's like you said, it's almost like if you could create it in a lab and make the perfect field, which everybody would say is impossible. It's pretty darn close, right? I mean, they just are. It is incredible to see it up close, and also just the vastness of it too. When you get down there, it's pretty cool. Like to know that they cover that kind of ground is pretty amazing. Like watching Acuna in right is a lot of fun. Like that dude can cover some ground.
Oh,
it's pretty
man,
good.
he is amazing. He's amazing.
It's amazing whenever you can hit the ball off the brick wall in right field and you can barely round first and the ball's already at second. Like that happened. That was a single. He might as well had the shift on and bunted down the third baseline. And that's how he got on because it looks the same, right? It was the same result. It doesn't look the same. It's the same result. I mean, he smokes one to right field off the brick wall, and Acuna plays it absolutely perfectly. Like, how does he know how that thing's going to bounce and ricochet off the wall? And that guy had barely rounded first, and the ball was already to second.
There are not a lot of players that are better than him in every phase of the game. He's just the true five-tool guy. Acuna.
No doubt about it. We'll come back. We'll talk to Tim Brando on the other side as you listen to Darren, Daunic, and Chase right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic here with you. Chase is off today. Elijah Campbell back at our Wholesale Link Game Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com on this hot day here in Middle Tennessee on this Tuesday. Let's bring in the man, the myth, the legend. We always enjoy our conversations with Tim Brando, just newly inducted into a Hall of Fame. I don't know. I've lost count how many Hall of Fames he's in. Tim, how you doing?
I'm good, Willie. Just the one. I've gotten some wonderful awards, but this is the first one, and I guess being in your state sports Hall of Fame is the way to go first, right? It was something special, and something I'll never forget.
Well, awesome. It only takes one, and then it's like the snowball rolling down the hill. One starts many, so you're on your way.
Well, I'm no longer worried about this being, connoting the end of my career. I was worried about that at one point, but I'm no longer worried about it. I'm embracing it, as they say, just as I am my new Medicaid. It's a little cheaper than Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I'm embracing it.
You can start. When are you going to start doing the commercials?
Well, that's a good thought. It's time to see Brando in the middle of the day instead of Chuck Woolery during commercials,
or Joe Namath,
or maybe those retirement, double mortgages. You can do that too.
Yes,
maybe it's time for some of those.
Yep.
Well, we've had fun with Broadway Joe Namath. His commercials. We've had fun on this show with him, his commercials that you see a lot for sure.
Right.
We wanted to get your early thoughts as we sit here in early July on NIL name. Just the new where we're going. Name, image, and likeness in college athletics as a new chapter has begun, and of course. Players have jumped on it, including one right here in our backyard who we had on the show when he signed at TSU, Hersey Miller, who is the son of Master P, and we had them both on the show, and he got a $2 million deal. So what do you make of all this, Tim, and where it's headed?
I have no problem with name, image, and likeness. I never have, and I think it's tremendous. I think it'll help perhaps keep some of the young men and women in college, particularly the men. I think the women by and by are staying in college all the way through until they have an opportunity to go to the WNBA or whatever other opportunities might be out there for them. But I do think, and I don't know that the media is paying any attention to it. I think it's an equalizer in some respects for women. Imagine you're a women's basketball player at Storrs, Connecticut, or a women's basketball player where basketball is a big thing. And the fans are, as you know, Willie, they are extremely loyal, no matter what college we're talking about. The fans that go to women's basketball games are generally older, and they're generally more loyal. And some of them own businesses, and some of them may use it. I use this, though, as and you hear about the big numbers, the big ones that come up, and I think Spencer Rattler got an agent and was right on top of it. There are a number of companies that SEC institutions and other institutions within the framework of intercollegiate athletics have already signed contracts with to help them monitor what's taking place so they feel like they can have some better control, because certainly the NCAA didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But I think that in so many ways, this is about the usage of social media and social media opportunities that have been out there. I don't know about you guys, but I'm on Cameo. So if any of your listeners out there want to take advantage of it, I'm there. If you want me to send out a Happy Father's Day greeting, do the voicemail with Keith Jackson's voice or Harry Carey's, I can do that. Okay, but if I can monetize that, this has happened to me all the time, and somebody explained it to me because I was new to it. And actually, my daughter Tiffany, who handles all my social media stuff and a lot of my speaking engagements and things of that nature, she said, "Dad, this is an opportunity for you to monetize something that you've been doing for free for years." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me about it." She says, "Well, imagine you're walking down the golf course and you're playing in a golf tournament and somebody says, 'Hey, could you record this for my my brother. He's a big fan of Harry Carey. He'd like for you to do the impression of Harry Carey as his phone mail, as his phone message. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'll be happy to do that. Well, or you might just want me to do it. Okay. Well, now I can monetize that. I have every right to monetize that. I'm taking the time to do it. So if I want to charge you $49.99 for that, that's my right. You're using my name, my image, or my likeness for your benefit. Okay. Well, players should be able to do that. If I can do it, and a fan of a certain team loves the quarterback at Vanderbilt, and they want them to ask him to do that, he should be able to make that money. All right, so those opportunities, that I think that's the bulk of it. I think that's where you're going to see the bulk of it, especially for those that are looking for some added revenue to go to a movie, to go out to eat, to do all those things that we've always talked about. Players needing some extra pocket change through the course of their careers, no matter what sport they might be involved in. So this is not the furor over this by so many fans, most of whom are my age or older, that think, oh my God, this is the end of amateurism in college football as we know it. Please stop, let it go. A lot of this is being fueled by the media overreaction to this, because of such stories as the one you just mentioned, the big $2 million deal. Those are isolated cases.
Yeah.
But does that kid have a right to that revenue? Sure he does. He really does.
He shouldn't be punished for Master P being his father.
No, exactly. He should not be penalized for that. We all, and when somebody says to me, well, the skill position players, wide receivers, quarterbacks, they're going to get all the money, and the offensive linemen, they're not going to get as much. I'm like, well, welcome to the real world. That's life.
Yep.
Okay? When you're protecting Tom Brady, you're not making as much as Tom Brady. That's a fact. Deal with it. Okay? This is real world stuff. Take it. You will have advantages in your life, and there will be disadvantages that you have to overcome. And this was all part of that. And I thought that's why we went to college. I thought that's why we were trying to grow and mature. These are the things that you need to find out along the way.
Yeah.
So I have never apologized for the fact that my father helped me get my first job calling high school football in September of 1971. If he had not done that, would I be where I am today? Probably not. But I also had some things I had to overcome. I was born in the Deep South, and I used to say, go get it instead of go get it. I had to really concentrate on phonics and really hone my craft so that people outside of the Deep South would want to listen to me. So, we have to deal with the pluses and the minuses that come our way because of where we're from or who we are. And that's just part of the journey. And the journey should be the best part. It certainly has been for me. And I think that people need to just chill on this and let's see it play out. And I think you're going to find that for the most part, name, image, and likeness is a wonderful thing that is going to help college athletics more than hurt it.
So you're saying if your dad didn't help you, you may have been, instead of doing play-by-play, what you've been doing in radio and television, you would have been on Swamp People, maybe? Maybe those episodes on the History Channel?
Or I could have been painting white lines down the streets of my hometown. I mean, I have no other skill set. You know what I mean? This is it. People used to say to me, Brando, what motivates you? And I would be like, fear. Okay? If this doesn't work, I'm in real trouble. Okay? But after the red light came on and I did the job, it was up to me to be good enough for other people to hire me. Okay? But I'm not. I tell young people this all the time. And by the way, it's become very popular now to hire certain people for certain jobs, that fit a certain makeup in life. And by the way, don't apologize for that. Okay, don't apologize for. Hey, there's a big trend now on hiring writers to be insiders on television. You think Will McDonough, when he started, doing the inside work for the NFL and NBC? Did you think he knew he was creating jobs for all of these writers across the country to get TV jobs? That was right in the middle of the 80s when I was working at ESPN when I just started. Here comes Peter Gammons. Here comes, name that writer that became a new insider for television. Well, they provided something that no one else was providing, that inside information. And without those guys, there wouldn't have been a Chris Mortensen. There wouldn't have been an Adam Schefter. Somebody's got to blaze the trail for others to have opportunities that come from a certain sect in media. Well, they shouldn't have. Why should they apologize for it? There was a move to get more information, man, because of those guys that came before them. So, that's a lot of it today. Cable news is all about what? Punditry. How many people you watch these shows and they got the same people on every day? Well, because we've become an audience-specific world in media as it relates to both news and sports today.
You brought up Cameo, and we've talked a lot about social media already. How do you think, Coach? You understand this. You have a lot of relationships with these either current or former coaches
right.
That don't exactly like their 18, 19, 20-year-olds on social media. In fact, most of them ban their kids from doing that stuff. Well, they can't do that anymore because this may be their outlet to making money. Now they may have a roster full of kids that are speaking on social media every day. How do you think current coaches will handle that?
Well, they got to adjust to it. And by the way, part of the reason why we're in the position we're in now is because the coaches have made literally tens of millions of dollars. Now, if you're paying a coach $8, $9, $10 million and he's doing a hell of a job, he's out there winning national championships. Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Ryan Day's been competing for them. It's one thing, but when you've got coaches making $5, $6, $7 million and they're not winning, or not winning to the extent that their fan base wants them to win, I think they probably need to take a look at the mirror and see that maybe they need to make some changes. And whenever I hear a coach disgruntled, and coaches are the lifeblood of what I do. I maintain, good relationships with just about all of them. Sometimes I've been great friends to a lot of coaches, but even those that were doing it and are out of it now, and some of them that have been in it a while and are having to adjust to it now, have done exactly that. They've had to adjust. And if they don't adjust, they're not going to be around very long. We all have to adjust and adapt in life. And I think that's going to be, there are going to be times when guys that have been authoritarian for such a long period of time have to yield a little bit more than they have in the past. And there's absolutely no denying that at the top of that list would be a guy like Nick with his process. He's going to have to adjust and adapt to that. He's getting the best players. He's getting the ones that are the most sought after. And if they're the most sought after, they're also going to be sought after in that other community, that community of name, image, and likeness. So I suspect that he'll be up to it because he's been up to making the adjustments in every other area. When Deshaun Watson lit him up for 41 points and he barely won that national title that year by getting 45, that told me he was willing to adjust. Okay, he knew he had to score points, not just win with his defense. So this is another area of adjustment, albeit off the field as well as on the field.
We're talking to Tim Brando from Fox Sports. And, Tim, I was just thinking when we were talking about the Cameo that you ought to back charge George Placer a few dollars for all the Beano Cook impressions you did on the show back in the day. Back when we would see you every year at the SEC tournament. He'd have you run down all those impersonations. He owes you a few dollars, I think.
Yeah, that would be another one too, right? Now, but anybody that wanted me to do Beano would be telling me how old they were. They would clearly be 60 or older. There's a whole generation out there, Willie, as you know, that doesn't even remember me calling your games. Okay, they really don't. It was literally a generation ago.
Right.
But back during those days, I probably got more requests for Beano than anybody. Unbelievable. I could hear him now talking about name, image, and likeness. I've got a player making more money at wide receiver at OSU than the coach at ULM. Unbelievable.
One of a kind. One of a kind. You know what's funny, Tim? I'm down here in Birmingham today doing the show. This is the technology we have now for a 15U baseball tournament, and I was driving a couple of the players by, my son being one of them, pointing out the old Birmingham Civic Center, and it got me thinking. The 1992 SEC basketball tournament was here. And I can't remember if you were calling games then or not, but
yes, I was there, and
you were at that tournament. Yeah, that was the thing I was thinking was that was the first year that Arkansas came into the SEC and was at the tournament, and Kentucky got off probation and they were back, and that was one of the coolest atmospheres I think I've ever seen. But,
that semifinal day was incredible, and I'll never forget the Arkansas-Alabama game in the semis. It had 7 first-round draft picks on the floor at the same time, and was one of the most unbelievable games ever. I was working the ACC early rounds in Charlotte and flew in for the SEC, and I got to that was the year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right when I say this. Wasn't that the Carlos Groves hugging Shaquille O'Neal tournament? I believe that it was.
I think that was the year before in Nashville, because that was at Memorial.
91?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that was 91 then. 92, I came in, and the Arkansas-Alabama semifinal was unreal. Alabama actually played Kentucky in the final. A kid named Washington hit a buzzer beater, I think, to beat Arkansas, but they had Day, Mayberry, Oliver Miller, that crowd still playing. And then you had, for Alabama, you had Robert Ory, Treadwell,
Latrell Sprewell.
They were loaded. Yeah. Latrell Sprewell, and Robert Ory, and a couple of other first-round draft picks.
Oh, yeah. David Benoit was part of that team. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, that would be another one. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And but I did the early rounds of the ACC in those days. I was still at ESPN, so I did the early rounds of the ACC, and then I came in and I did the finals, the championship game for ESPN, and it turned out to be Bama and Kentucky. And I want to say Wimp had a string of SEC titles, and Pitino won that one, beat him in the finals. But I think the Arkansas-Bama game for a non-championship game was maybe the greatest SEC tournament game ever played. I mean, it was incredible, the pace of play that day. It was. And you're right. The old Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center was a great spot because it was located right next to that hotel, and you literally could just walk there. And the SEC had gone through its 80s. It morphed into something really special, SEC basketball, during the 80s, mid-80s on.
Yeah.
And by 91, 92, 93, it was like, oh, my God, now Arkansas is in the league. And the biggest part of that was watching the Kentucky fans have to deal with the calling of the Hogs, because it didn't matter how good teams like Alabama or LSU, even with Dale's teams, their crowds didn't follow them the way Arkansas's did. So when Kentucky fans saw this barrage of red and these people wearing Hogs heads and calling the Hogs, you could just see how intimidated they were. It was like, oh, my God, this was once the Kentucky Invitational, but not anymore. You're absolutely right.
Tim Corbin once told us recently, Tim, he said, when you look, because we were asking about the atmosphere in Fayetteville for the Super Regional, he said, when you look in the crowd and see a 50-year-old man with a hog head on, he said, you're in a different place.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. They've got that was such a great dynamic. And Tim, you just went through the names. This is what I worry about a lot. I mean, you love college basketball. All of us love it. And we're seeing now when you can transfer and not sit out, the turnover in rosters. I mean, we're putting together a great history, but these were teams that had some of these guys were there for 3 years, right? This was just before everybody started leaving, like Shaquille O'Neal.
Right.
Kids today, they don't realize that Shaq played 3 years of college basketball. That would never happen today, right? But how does college basketball stay relevant in the way it needs to? Like we know it's lost something, but now I feel we're going to another level when it might be even more of the turnover, and you just can't really get used to and watch rosters and teams grow together.
Well, I think that's one of the great fears now we're hearing from football people is that, oh, my God, we're going to go the way of basketball. And I think for coaches, they are now learning what basketball coaches have been dealing with for years, and that is you've got to reconstruct teams every year. You can't think about your program from a big picture standpoint. Have a group together 2, 3, 4 years, that kind of thing. It was brought up a few times recently this past week about, in fact, I talked to Shaquille about a week or so ago, and, one of his great regrets is that the team with Chris Jackson and Stanley Roberts and him that lost in the second round to Lethal Weapon 3 and what was a great second-round game, that team didn't stay together longer. And it's true. He didn't really have a point guard other than that year. And you think about it, Chris was more of a lead guard. He was more of a scoring point guard, not a distributing guard. And so when anybody says, that was an unbelievable team that didn't get past the second round, they're right. But they also ran up against an unbelievable team, I mean, that team with Lethal Weapon 3 was just an awesome basketball team and went on to the, Final Four, you might recall, in 1990. So there's a lot to be said for, the issues that the coaches in basketball dealt with years ago that now football's going through. But to answer your question, the best way for college basketball to grow in relevance, in my opinion, has been and continues to be the need to move the conference season, and the calendar itself needs to be moved back. Starting in November and playing games that are never remembered is bad for college basketball. March Madness needs to be in April. We need to move it back. There's no longer a need. Turner is ponying up all the money now, or at least 80% of it, not CBS. That's 80% of the bill on the NCAA tournament is paid by Turner. And if you watch it, it's becoming more and more of a Turner type of event than CBS, which, by the way, is a great thing because they've got all the channels that are available, and people don't have to miss games. They can go to whatever game they want. There was a time when I was doing the tournament, you might be going to 20% of the country, and we had the best game, and then they bring all these people in from other regions because we had a great game going on. Well, now you can go to TNT, or you can go to True, or you can go to TBS, or you can go to CBS, which is fantastic. Right. Okay, it's much better for viewing, but the problem is the calendar has gotten so congested. The NFL has added a playoff game. College football is going to expand now to 12. That's going to happen. Could happen as early as 23. Certainly, it's going to happen in 25. The NCAA tournament runs till 2032, and this notion that it has to end in time for Augusta National is just it's absurd. It's absurd. Rushing through college basketball through early March to try to finish it in time for the blossoming in Augusta National is just outdated. Right. It really is. Everything in basketball should be moved back so we get better exposure, and we get to know some of these players. We have reduced college basketball to basically this conversation, okay? All right, who's in, all right? Who's on the bubble, and right. Then who are the top seeds, okay? Who's going to be the number one seed? Well, that's overblown. How many times does the number one seed win it? Not as often as people think. And who's on the bubble means we're talking a lot about teams that aren't going to get past the first round. So why are we just talking about that? We should be introducing America to all these players and letting them get accustomed to who they are. I think it's a given that we're not going to see players stay for 3 or 4 years anymore. And in many cases, they may play collegiately for 4 years, but just not at the same place. So let's let the sport breathe a little bit. It's the only sport, Willie, that, as you know, is a 2-semester sport. So we're asking right. so much more of these kids. from an academic standpoint, those that really do approach it that way. And that's another thing, too. Hopefully now, especially with NIL, we can stop with the absurdity of student-athlete conversation. Because for me, I've been calling them players for years. Some want to be students, some don't. And by the way, if they don't and they're just preparing themselves for professional ball, then that's their choice. And you know what? That's why you go to college, to prepare yourself for what will be your vocation and what will carry you through, your lifetime. And if that happens to be playing ball, go get you some. Okay? I don't think there's anything wrong with calling people players. I think it's hypocritical to be doing all the things that they're doing and to be allowing the things that they're now allowing, and for us to be made to be told that we have to call them student athletes. In some cases, yes. But in every case, no. So stop hitting us over the head with it.
So, Tim, you touched on the college football playoff. I can remember, you were discussing theories like this. What's the best way to do the playoffs? You've been fielding questions for generations, right? For at least one generation of what's the best way to do it. So do you like the 12? Is this the right mix here?
Yes, absolutely. And, Willie, this was a must financially after the hemorrhaging of revenue last year. And I think that sped things up a little bit, and I'm happy that it did. I congratulate the new leadership, these new conference commissioners. Greg Sankey probably as influential as any, because he did a 180 on this, as you know. Publicly, he was always saying, well, we're very fine with 4. Our constituency's been very satisfied with it. I mean, he was giving you that politically correct, right down the constituency line of the SEC. We're winning crystals with this system as it is. But you saw an about face from him that was vital. And the reason that you saw it was because he knew that he had to write additional checks to send to certain schools in the league to help them out during what was an awful year financially because of COVID. Now, the SEC had the opportunity to do that. Not every league does. So given all those financial circumstances that he knew about, and if it was happening there, God knows it was happening everywhere else, they had to make some real specific changes. And the money's been left on the table for a long period of time. Each school, $667 million, I think, was the number for the CFP, all right, that was being distributed. Well, now we're going to be talking about 1.8 to 2.2 billion with a B every year with this new system. Why? Because of inventory and additional revenue that comes from playing a lot more games. When you've got 12 teams in and you're talking about 8 more games, that's significant, very significant. And I think we're going to see all of America look at every game with every team from, say, mid to late October all the way through the end of the regular season and into the conference championship games thinking, oh, my God, this could be beneficial. Our team could move into the top 12. We got a shot here. And I think moving the playoff games back to the campuses, even for just the 5, for right now, it's 5, 12, 6, 11, 7, 10, 8, 9, and so on. But imagine what it would be like if you were in one of those games and you get to play a home game in that environment for the right to go into the next round of the college football playoffs. It's going to be outstanding. And when people say to me, isn't it a shame, though, the top 4 teams don't get that opportunity? But you got to remember this, Willie. There are current contracts that are still in existence right now with the bowls from the current agreement, okay?
Right.
And because of that current agreement, it's not in the best interest of anyone in a conference commissioner's position to start talking about home field opportunities beyond that. I do think, depending on when we start, whether it's in 23 or in 25, I think the chance to move additional games to the campuses still exists. I think that there's time to address that. They cannot address it now because of the current existing contracts that they have with the bowls. And by the way, if they do keep those games or add more bowls to the fray with regard to the expansion of the playoff, I've got no problem with that either. I think that fans are going to follow their teams, the ones that can, no matter where, and opening it up to additional people to watch the games is fine. And this is a decision that's going to aid and abet the importance of college football's postseason and not get it lost. Lately it's been lost due to the time lapse between the conference championship games and then the playoffs starting. We go like almost a month without football. And
right.
Even when the games were played, they were played on the same weekends as wild card NFL playoff games, which took it just sucked all the joy out of college football. Well, now those games are going to fall with the dates where they are because of the NFL's expansion. It's going to fill a void, and college football will have its rightful place when we come to New Year's Day and the weekend after that. And man, oh man, do we need that again.
Tim, we always love these conversations with you, especially when it's a little more laid back in the summer. But we still have to go to commercial, unfortunately. But thanks a lot for catching up with us as always. Always great telling stories and getting your perspective on this stuff.
Okay, Willie. Great talking to both of you, and tell Chase I hope he's enjoying himself. Okay?
Okay. No, we will do that. He will have missed this conversation, but Tim, we'll talk to you down the road. Thanks again.
You got it, fellas. Bye-bye.
All right. One of the best, Tim Brando, Fox Sports, great historian of the SEC and more, his days at ESPN. He is really a true Hall of Famer. And, Darren, I'm with you that before it's over, he'll be in more than one. But start with his home state of Louisiana. When we come back, we'll wrap up hour number one, and we'll hash out what he mentioned there at the end about the bowl conversation, because it does affect the Music City Bowl. We were talking to Butch Spearden about this on Friday. Stay tuned. We're coming back on Darren, Daunic, and Chase.
Don't forget, 94.9 is the official English radio home of the Nashville Soccer Club. Listen in Thursday evening. Nashville SC will be taking on Atlanta. Yeah, Atlanta United at Nissan Stadium. Pregame begins at 7:15. The match will begin at 7:30. Actually, we drove by their complex, which is very close to True S Park. Willie, it is. From what you could see, it's surrounded by a lot of landscape. But and it's hard to see from the interstate, but I was pointed out from friends of ours that live down there, and I was like, whoa. But evidently it is really, really nice, according to them, and it looked really, really nice, kind of like their facility, which is fantastic. So anyway, Nashville hosting Atlanta on Thursday at Nissan Stadium. Before we get into quickly what Tim threw out there, along these lines, I just saw this while we were talking to Tim Brando. A Miami booster has committed north of $500,000 in endorsements to the entire Hurricanes roster. And the tweet goes on to say, and that's just the beginning of his plans to use NIL to bring back the U. Not surprised at all, right? This is the new world that we're living in. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The boosters now have basically a legal way to do their thing.
Yep.
And this is one of the things that I don't know. This is why I always ask the question. I use the term the wild, wild west, right? No law and order, whatever, because that's where we're at right now. There's no system that's been defined on what's in bounds and what's out of bounds. And so people are going to test the bounds, right? If you got a lot of money and you love your school and you want to win, you don't even have to be discreet about it anymore, right? You can just there's no handing a person an envelope or anything. Just strike a deal. You work for my business, right? You're promoting my business. You can make money off your name, and maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe that's the way it always should have been.
Are you saying you have regrets? You would have liked some
Regrets?
Endorsement deals? Yeah.
Well, I would have been mooching off some of my teammates that might have gotten some
hey,
endorsement deals.
The tweet says has committed north of $500,000 in endorsements to the entire roster. So there you go. It's not specifically saying
I do think
the
that
best
like
players.
Take a team that I didn't play on. We were just talking about the early 90s SEC, pretty high profile in Nashville, right? Nashville hosted the 91 SEC tournament. You had guys like Shaq. It was the biggest sporting event going on in the city at the time. The city wasn't as big as it is now. But the Vanderbilt basketball team, now individually, once we got guys like Billy McCaffrey and guys like that, we won the SEC championship. And that was my senior year, which I didn't play. I only played baseball. But if I were on that team, there might have been some businesses. Well, we can't get you Billy McCaffrey, but we can get you the scrub guard who comes off the bench and plays 3 minutes a game, Willie Daunic. Well, I don't know. I mean, but the team itself was marketable, right? I can see people around our program, if you had that rule, would say, okay, how do we take advantage of this? Who are the businessmen in Nashville who like Vanderbilt, who come to the games? Are they willing to help? How do we get the next wave of great players? That's what I'm sure every coach in every city right now and every program is probably thinking, right? How do I use this to my advantage? It's a natural part of competition, is how do you use the rules to your advantage? And this is a new rule.
Well, if people think that the haves are not going to continue to separate themselves from the have-nots, they're extremely naive.
Now, they have a built-in advantage, as we know.
Right.
Yeah.
This does create an opportunity for the haves were always going to have the advantages over the have-nots. But what it does is it gives the have-nots the opportunity to at least have a piece of the pie, their own piece of the pie, whatever that piece is in their world, right? Because they don't have the nicer facilities. They don't have the 100,000-seat stadium. But just because you play at football at Akron and you would never receive anything like this, and yes, you're not going to get the Alabama benefits or the Oklahoma benefits or the Texas benefits or the Ohio State benefits, but you can get some benefits. You can get rewarded because this just in.
Right.
Yes, you don't play at those big schools, but they still work hard and they practice hard and they have to study. They have to do the same thing that the kids that go to big schools do. And so they just get an opportunity now to get, rewarded. And it may be a much smaller scale, but guess what? It still gives them a sense of satisfaction that somebody is rewarding them for, the hard work they're putting in. But let's also, like I said, let's not be naive. The big schools, the big Power 5 schools, the ones with deep pockets, boosters that contribute a lot of money, they are just going to separate themselves even more because there is going to be a large slush fund over to the left side of a room. They're full of safes, and they're just going to have a slush fund in there where they can figure out how to divvy out all this money to these players. And then, oh, by the way, when recruits come in, they go show them the safe room. Go open up the safes. Here you go. Look what's inside. That's what can be yours if you come here. I mean, don't think something like that. I'm being obviously, a little over the top here. But for effect, something like that could happen or will happen. Not could, will happen. They're going to use this to their advantage.
Right. I just hope that the coaches and the students, the families, don't get so caught up in this because think about the possibilities. We have all these possibilities that we're talking about. Don't forget when you are in college, you should learn something. Take advantage. It is a good thing to go to class, even though maybe you don't have to. Some of these guys, as Tim was talking about, some people, the very top 0.01%, right? They are in a position to be making a lot of money and preparing for their professional life, but it's still good to go to class.
Yeah.
I hope some people don't lose sight of that.
A little bit later in the show, we will come back and revisit this, and we will talk about the effect of the Music City Bowl that we also got into that conversation with Tim. So we'll do that a little bit later in the program. When we come back, we'll talk with TD to start the second hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase. That's next. Second hour, Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic here with you. Chase is off today. Elijah Campbell back there manning the board at our Wholesale Link Game Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. On Mondays at this time, we're treating today like Monday. We were off yesterday, and hope a lot of you had a fantastic fourth weekend, or everybody had a fantastic fourth weekend. So we're treating today like Monday. So we talk with TD to start the second hour of the show. Teron Davenport now joins us. He is the NFL Nation reporter covering the Titans for ESPN and ESPN.com. And, of course, makes an appearance on all the shows, including his Power Hour on Thursdays. He's got a hit with Robbie and Rexroad. So we always enjoy his visits, and he now joins us. TD, what's going on? How was your weekend?
Hey, what's going on? Had a great weekend. I hope you guys did the same.
Yeah. Do you like the 4th? Do you like fireworks?
I'm not really too big on that, but I mean, it's it's something that it gives you an opportunity to go to a nice cookout. So I definitely like that part of it.
Yeah, that is true. It usually is around a cookout. Good point. I'm going to start in a weird place because you're like, really? You're going to start talking off about kickers? It is kind of important. I know they've kind of avoided that the last 2 years where it hasn't really bit them in the butt. We had a really good conversation last week with Brett Kern, and it is interesting. He talked about some, he's been working out with and what have you. It's always good to talk with Brett, and I do wonder, as we get closer, we inch a little bit closer to camp, which is going to begin here at the end of this month. Hard to believe. How do you think this kicking situation is really going to play itself out?
Yeah, well, first off, shame on me for missing the Brett Kern conversation. He's one. I really like Brett Kern, man. He's a really cool dude, and he's literally the best at what he does. So that was a good one there. I think as far as the kicking thing is concerned, I think Blake Hallbull out of Ohio State is going to be the guy. In 28 out of 35 field goal attempts, along of 55 yards. He did not miss a single extra point throughout his career. So I think when you look at those things, those all lean towards a guy having a nice inside track towards becoming the kicker. And I think really the thing that you have to look at with him is he did a lot of the stuff in bad weather. That Big Ten conference is not really a conference for a kicker, a quarterback, receiver, because that weather is typically very, very treacherous. So I think he has the inside track, but I mean, obviously Tucker McCann is a guy that they like, so we're just going to see how it works. But I think Hallbull, he's a bigger kicker, and I just think, that experience at Ohio State is going to transfer over, and obviously Mike Vrabel, Ohio State, that's a connection there, and I think he's going to come in and do the job pretty well.
Interesting. So they go young and cheap as opposed to the veteran kicker, you think?
Yeah, and I don't even think, Tucker McCann is not exactly what I would call a veteran, right? There's still a lot of unproven aspects to him as well. But, I mean, if you're saying from a veteran standpoint, like maybe Gostkowski, riding that roller coaster again or something like that, I think they go this route with Blake Hallbull.
Interesting. Okay.
Hallbull is also from Buffalo, New York, and that's another connection I didn't realize. I was just looking at his bio here, as is Brett Kern. We had that was part of our conversation, Toronto. I would recommend if anybody is a big fan of Brett Kern. There's a lot of them out there, but it's a great conversation about just not only about the kicking job that Darren's bringing up, but his history too. These are the great things that you can have in the summer when things are a little more laid back. He was talking about playing football and soccer. The fields were adjacent. The football coach discovered him. He was kicking balls back to the football field, punting them back while he was playing goalie. It was just a really interesting thing about how a punter becomes a punter, right? Like who grows up says, I want to be a punter? Not too many people, but that skill, they find their way, right? And ththese guys are incredible at how they do it.
Well, because of Brett Kern, there are some kids in Nashville who are dreaming of being punters, so he's doing his job.
No doubt.
And, the thing with him, I always like to talk to him about how much the punting game is really compared to golf. And it's really interesting. Next time you get to speak to him, make sure you bring that up, and he'll talk about, the different punts and the different things he puts on the ball to make it do different things. It's really cool.
Yeah, in fact, 2 years ago, and I don't know if he grew up. It's kind of a funny line, Willie. I don't think he grew up wanting to be a punter, but once he realized he was going to be the punter and kicker in high school, and then got a college scholarship because of it at Akron 2 years ago, I walked into the game. I sat away from them. I was up in the press box where Tehran was, but my family and another family, we were with the Akron kicker, the Akron punter and kicker. Actually, was just the punter 2 years ago. And I told him specifically, I was like, watch. It was for the Titans-Browns game. And I said, watch Brett Kern. He's the best in the business. And they kept texting me every time he came out because they were sitting in the end zone. And I was like, just watch what he does, man. He is as good as it gets at the NFL level, the best in the league. And, of course, we had good conversation after the game of just how impressed he was with Brett Kern. But that is, there you go. Like I said, I don't know if he grew up saying I want to be a punter or kicker, but once he realized that was his path, he was obviously all in on that position. Speaking of having conversations with people, we had our conversation with Brett Kern. You had your conversation with Delanie Walker. We've talked so much with you about the tight end position. How does he feel about right now the current landscape of the tight end positions on the Titans roster, and in particular, Anthony Ferguson?
Yeah, he is very high on Anthony Ferguson. In fact, he predicts he's going to be a Pro Bowl level player. He's going to be someone that will have a big year this year. And I think when you look at Ferguson, the thing that stands out for me is, and it's funny because in talking to him, I found out that he was a basketball player. He was a hooper in the past. And I told him it just really fits because a lot of the things that you do off of the line of scrimmage at the top of your routes, it reminds me of like you're trying to cross somebody over. And he said that's exactly what he does. So the route running is very good, and he's one of those guys that even though he's not fast, he's not quick, it just is really hard to cover. He knows how to use leverage and how to lean a little bit. It's a lot like Jason Witten, in fact. A lot like that as far as like being able to lean one way before you break the other and just kind of create separation that way. His hands are very consistent, and that's something that Delanie Walker said that he really liked. And I think he's going to have a pretty solid year, and Delanie is actually higher on him than a lot of other people, and that's why that kind of caused a little bit of a stir or a buzz. But he definitely feels that it's going to be a big year for Ferguson.
How much did that surprise you? I mean, that's a pretty steep expectations to say he believes he can be a Pro Bowl tight end.
It didn't surprise me at all, actually, because you know how guys, when you spend time with someone
Sure.
and you go into the whole part of their developing, you generate a high feeling for them, a high understanding of what they bring to the table. And there are some things that Delanie Walker knows about Ferguson that no one else does because of the time that they spent together, grinding it out and doing the things they had to do. So, no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Another camp battle, and I think we talked about camp battles with you last week, and I may have been the one starting that conversation. How do you think, we all know that Derrick Henry, I mean, I guess if anybody could do it, it could be Derrick Henry. But, realistically, I'm not sure he's in for another 2,000-yard season. It's never been done in NFL history. But like I said, if anybody can buck that trend, it's Derrick Henry. So we suspect his workload is going to be less than last year. How much? Don't know. But they need that other guy, the guy to give him relief. Who is going to get the bulk of action, whether it's play action or whether it's just handing the ball off? Who do you think is going to be the clear-cut number two? Not who they want it to be, but who do you think ultimately is going to be that guy that relieves Derrick Henry?
I think it's going to be Darrington Evans, and this reminds me a lot of something I saw with the Eagles. And actually, I think Brian Hill's going to get it too. And it reminds me of something I saw with the Eagles back when they had Deuce Staley, Brian Westbrook, and Carell Buckhalter, where you had like your thumper, your guy that grinds out, gets all the tough yards, and Deuce, and then you had your change of pace guy who is Murder coming out of the backfield, right, catching passes, and Brian Westbrook, and then you had your guy that just did both of those things pretty well, and it was just an efficient As a matter of fact, Deuce Staley once referred to another running back, Corey Clement, is like one of those. He says he's like a Honda Accord, right? It's not too flashy, but it's reliable and it's always going to come through for you. And that, I think, is a way that I would describe Brian Hill, where he's going to get you the carries, get you the yards. It may not be the most extravagant style of run, but it's going to be reliable. You could count on it, just like the Honda Accord. So I think that's the way it'll look. But the thing with Evans that really stands out for me is the fact that he's a home run hitter. So now when you take Derrick Henry out of the game, you're not losing, or you're going to lose some because there aren't many home run hitters like Henry, and as far as running backs are concerned. You're going to lose some, but you still have that aspect of a back being able to score from anywhere on the field on those stretch plays, right, where you cut it back and you get to that second level and you use your speed and you could do some things that, will allow you to make a house call from a long distance away. So I think that's really the key. It's going to be a three-headed type of monster, but obviously Henry's going to mostly be featured. I think it's still going to be another 300-carry season for Derrick Henry, and there's still space for Brian Hill and Evans to get their carries. And don't forget, Evans, he worked a bit as a receiver with Rob Moore and the receivers during minicamp. And that's something I could definitely see them having, like what you would call like a pony package, where you have Henry and Evans in the game at the same time. You motion Evans out on top of the numbers, and you let him run routes against a linebacker and win for you in that situation. So I think there's going to be a bunch of touches there for all three of those guys.
Brian Hill, for those that maybe haven't looked closely, 4.7 yards per carry last year. Pretty good. I mean, better than I realized. That's an upgrade there for sure to have a guy who's done that in that position. No offense to the guys they used last year, right? Those guys did a pretty nice job, but this guy could be a step ahead.
Absolutely. And it's like I said, man, the Honda Accord, man, it's going to get you where you have to go. That's like Brian Hill. That's what we're gonna call him.
I once drove an Accord. That was my first car. It was my friends called it a go-kart because it looked like it was so light that the back wheels might, if you hit the brakes, the back wheels might come up in the air. It was it did not have much behind it, but it got the job done, as you said, Teron. But let me throw this at you. You talked to Delanie Walker. We're such fans of him, right? You just want to see good things happen for that guy, and you're pretty confident that he's going to be successful in life. But where is he right now in the wanting to come back, thinking about coming back, opportunities to come back? Where is that right now?
Yeah, he said he wants to come back and play, and he's healthy. And I told him that I could tell that he was healthy watching him at tight end university, whereas you saw quickness again with him. You saw explosiveness when they were working on just their releases off the line of scrimmage. You saw them like it was there. He didn't look like a guy who had an ankle injury that shredded his career, so to speak. And I think he's far removed from that, and he's ready to go. But he did make a good point about how good he feels. But he said, well, I can't sit here and tell you 100% that if I go out there and I'm getting tackled and those type of things, I can't tell you how it's going to react to that. So he understands really what it is. He wants to play for a winner, a contender. He wants to win a Super Bowl. The man has been to a Super Bowl back there in 2011, 2012, in that season with the 49ers. So he gets it, and at this point, that's what he wants to cap off his career with, a team type of victory like that, because he's gotten pretty much all the individual accolades, right? He's a guy that was clearly one of the top tight ends in the league for quite some time, and the injury took its toll, and he just he wants to come back, and that's understandable, right? These guys, you don't want to be forced out of you want to go out when you're ready to go out, and I think that's really the mindset he has. But in the meantime, he's just out there chilling on his boats. He has a tremendous boat collection. I remember from back in San Francisco, he was big on cars as well. So that's pretty much his hobby. He's focusing on that, staying ready, just in case that phone call comes.
So I think we would all love the story, right? If the Titans gave him a shot, we would all love to see that. But is there any chance that would happen?
Yeah, I highly doubt that's going to happen. I just think that this team is kind of set where they are at tight end, and it's just going to come down to some of the younger guys. Miller, Forrester, Briley Moore. These guys, I think, are going to, especially Briley Moore. Actually, in my roster projection, I had him. He's the undrafted tight end out of Kansas State. And I think he's the perfect fit for what they want to do because he's a blend of both Ferkser and Swain. He did a lot of H-back type assignments there. So, you get like that guy that is able to do some of the things that Michael Pruitt did for them. So I think he makes the roster, actually, as an undrafted free agent. And I think he's going to have a bigger role than people are projecting. So definitely watch out for Briley Moore.
Our morning show, Joe, I guess it was Adam and Robbie talking this morning about an article where Chris Ballard was talking about, he's the Colts GM, and he was talking about his philosophy about building a roster. It's pretty interesting because, in some markets, Tehran, that pull, that desire for the fans to try to do everything you can to win right now sort of takes over. You almost can't do it the way Chris Ballard does it. But he was talking about a patient approach, never overpaying for free agents in his mind. He used the term, don't pay A money for a B free agent or something like that. And he said to do it that way, you have the money to re-sign your guys. It sounds like such a sound philosophy, but I just wonder why more people don't do it that way, if that's the best way to go.
Yeah, because I think it's funny. You get into these battles, right, and you start a bidding war type situation where you have to have this guy and another team has to have him too, and you're kind of going back and forth. I think that really pushes things. I think you get caught up in believing in the potential of a player. Carl Lawson was a good example of that. He has a lot of potential. Statistically, he didn't really do much, right? But his potential is there. So that's why I believe it was the Jets that signed him. So that's why he's technically a B free agent, but he's a free agent that you project into becoming an A. And if you project wrong, then you're in trouble. But when you project right, like the Packers did with Zadarius Smith, a guy I know the Titans had some interest in, but they got to a point as far as the cost that they said, well, you know what, we're going to pull out of that running, and they kind of been reeling at that position since, and they're hoping that Bud Dupree is a guy that could help fix it. So it's really just, for me, when I look at it, it's a projection thing, but then, other times you're able to facilitate a really good trade like the Colts did, right, and bringing in DeForest Buckner and signing him up and locking him in there to be with them. You look at that team, for the most part, they don't lose too many free agents. Obviously, Daunic Autry moved on, but I think, they're going to be strong right through the middle. You got Buckner, they're going to sign Leonard, and you have the safeties that are pretty good, right? Julian Blackmon is a solid safety that they got with a fourth-round pick, and he's someone that's going to be around for a while and be a key part of that defense. So they're in good shape, and I believe they managed to bring back Xavier Rhodes, too, at the right cost. So Chris Ballard, he is doing it right, and, I thought that team would go out there and splurge and sign a whole bunch of guys, but they didn't, and they just continue to have that cap space. So when they do want to make a move, they could do it, and it's not an issue.
Yeah, that is another offshoot. Keeping that flexibility is a strength for sure. Tehran, good stuff. And as I toss it back to Darren, we do have to salute our New York Mets, who continue to lead the NL East. 2 out of 3 from the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. You take that every time.
Subway Series, you definitely take that.
Yeah, that's right.
Anytime, man. It feels good. The meme, right? They got the Tiger Woods smiling and the Tiger Woods mugshot, and they say, this is a Mets fan in April, and this is a Mets fan after Memorial Day. But you know what? It's still the same for me. I'm smiling just the same as I was in April.
One day at a time. One day at a time. Darren, how's the Tribe?
Darren just a little bit of a slump. A little bit of a slump. Hey, they were on a big winning streak, and they hit a wall.
They get some injuries, but
I will see
your
your guys. Right. I will see your all's Mets in Miami the first week of August. So I'm looking forward to that. Marlins and
let's
Mets.
hope they're still in good shape here.
Yeah.
Long way to go.
Hey, Teron, appreciate it as always. You have a great week, and we'll be checking out Talking with TD. Do you know who you're going to be speaking with this week?
We're just going to run TMC, and Elijah and I, we're going to just go back and forth. I think it's time to look at the roster, better, worse, or the same, and that'll coincide right with actually, I'm working on a defensive version of that now that it'll post on ESPN.com. So you'll get kind of the audio version of that, just with a little seasoning and sauce from Elijah Campbell, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. We will definitely check that out. Thank you, as always. That is Teron Davenport, NFL Nation reporter covering the Titans for ESPN and ESPN.com. He joins us every Monday. And to begin the second hour, he's got the Power Hour on Thursdays as well, and also on our morning show, I believe, on Fridays. So check out Talking with TD this week. Conversation on the other side as you listen to the DDC right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Don't forget to tell us what you know. That's coming up at 11:45. Got a great prize attached to that. All you have to do is just tell us something you know. Pretty open canvas, pretty easy to do. Don't forget to go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. When you see Nashville's best deals on there, click on that. The deals that are happening right now, they're $50 Bad Axe Throwing, Nashville, a gift card for only $25. Buy one, get one free, Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon. Get yours now while they last. thegamenashville.com. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Like I said, this is what I know. Coming up at 11:45, we had East. We'll bring in Vince Ferrara coming up at high noon. So good stuff there from TD. It is interesting when you reference that article in The Athletic on Chris Ballard and just kind of his approach. Well, I think the one thing that really jumps out to me is what his unwillingness to do certain things, but his willingness, which should be no surprise to anybody. The league has identified, everybody knows the most important position is the quarterback position. He hasn't been afraid to that, right? Since Andrew Luck just up and retired right before the season, and then they went a year of Jacoby Brissett, it's been very clear. While they like Jacoby Brissett and they like, what he brings to the table, obviously he's a good team guy, they like him being around. I don't think they like him as their every week starter. He goes out and makes the deal for Phillip Rivers. That worked out. They made the playoffs and played the Bills, tight in Buffalo. They fell short, but they got to the playoffs, and now they've Phillip Rivers retires. They go out and get Carson Wentz, but they don't take that approach, across the board. They certainly do things differently when it comes to other positions.
I love the debate about what is the best philosophy, because what have we talked about a lot this offseason is the Titans have seen an opportunity and they're going for it, right? With their desire to go get Julio Jones. They didn't have to do that. And it seems like the type of move that Chris Ballard would shy away from, right? Now, they had to get creative to bring in the Carson Wentz, but they did it without sacrificing the flexibility in the cap. Like in a flat cap situation that they have right now in the NFL, the Colts are one of the few teams that have a lot of salary cap space. I thought that was pretty interesting that they resisted jumping up to the cap like so many teams were. They have not had to trim a lot of fat, and the Titans did, right? The Titans had to lose players to create the space to get the players that they have. So it's a contrast in philosophies. Not that I would say that John Robinson is a huge gambler. I think he's very cap conscious at all times, but Chris Ballard seems to be a little more long ranging, and I think it's a great debate on what's the best way to do it, because in some markets, like, you don't have a choice. Like Dallas isn't ever going to do that. New York's never going to do that, right? Philadelphia probably
pressure.
not.
Yeah,
there's too much pressure. They salary. You have all the salary cap space. What are you doing? Go get some players, right? But I think it's a sound philosophy.
I think even now you could throw in the Patriots into that discussion. Look what they did this offseason, right? And I think there's real pressure, probably because of decades of winning at a high level, that, what did they go this year? 8-8 or whatever? I mean, they're a 500 team at best. So there is real pressure in that market. We know the Boston area is – they don't exactly sit on their hands and they don't have anything to say. So I think the Patriots are in that. They just were able to operate differently when they had that guy, Tom Brady. They could do things differently. They didn't have to, operate like everybody else. But then they get Cam Newton somewhat on the cheap, and they've trimmed all this fat, and then now they had the most money to spend, and they went out and they spent the most money. They were very, very aggressive on the free agent market. Now we'll see how that plays out and how that, typically most teams, when you try to build through free agency, it really doesn't work out, right?
It's tough. It's tough.
It just, more times than not, it ends up not being the solution. It ends up not being, the quick fix, so to speak, because that's what it is. You are looking for the quick fix, and typically it doesn't work out where it's the quick fix, and it kind of flops. I mean, more times than not, it's not the way to go about it. You build through the draft, and you understand that is a much slower process, but that's typically how you build these dynasties. Or when you get the special player, then you can change things. Like Kansas City can operate differently because they have Mahomes. When Aaron Rodgers is there, the Packers could operate differently, which is what got them in this mess too, right? Like Aaron Rodgers eventually stood up and said, enough is enough. Like you have basically said, oh, don't worry about his side of the ball because I can, pull the rabbit out of the hat every single year, so you go address other things. Well, I want some shiny toys too. And so it ended up biting them in the rear end that they basically kept ignoring, his wide receiver position, his running backs, and at times the offensive line because it was like, well, Aaron will bail him out on that side of the ball. We'll address other things. So it is interesting when you look at it. Will this Carson Wentz work? Will this experiment work? Will he morph back into the one season that everybody's hanging on in Philadelphia? Because I've said it. I'm not sold on Carson Wentz. I need to see it to believe it. Long term. I need to see more than just that one season, that one magical season where, I watched Carson Wentz last year. Maybe it was because he wasn't getting along with the coach. Maybe there were other things, circumstances going on behind the scenes that we didn't know about. But the Carson Wentz that I saw last year and have seen in the past was crap. And so I'm not sold on him. I'm not sold that he is the guy that all of a sudden, now that he's there, all the other pieces in Indianapolis, and he is going to take them to the promised land. I'll need to see it to believe it. Not that he can't do it. I know the Colts have done a really good job of building everything else up. He's going to have the best offensive line he's ever had, right? He never had this offensive line in Philadelphia.
Well, that's right. And now they have had to, Costanzo, they had to replace him. But I do think that's the advantage, and that is their hope, is that because they have built their roster mostly from within, right? They've had the ability. They've kept the flexibility in their salary cap with Ballard's philosophy of being able to sign their own players, right? In other words, the second contract. You draft them. If you draft well, you have a group of players that you want to sign to a second contract. You're not in a position to have to pick and choose. We've seen it with the Titans, right? A lot of their draft picks, they have elected either not to pick up the fifth-year option or not sign them to that next deal, right? And part of it is because, A, maybe they're not worth the big money for the second deal, but also, B, they haven't had a huge amount of room to be able to do that, right, because of other moves. That seems to have not happened with the Colts. That's their philosophy, is not put yourself in that position. So they have some continuity, and their theory is that they'll bring Wentz in, and they're surrounding him with a good group that's been together for a while. They have a coach that's worked with him before. I see what their thinking is. I'm more optimistic than you are that Wentz will have a resurgence because of those factors.
Well, I would say on the Titans end of things, I believe it's more about talent or lack of, not being worth the second contract, because typically, yes, the salary cap is a big part of it. I understand that. But typically, when you invest that many hours into a player with your scouting department, right, and all the hours in rooms talking about that player, and they've been yours for 4+ years, typically, if you have to shave money, you're shaving it somewhere else. You're not shaving it with your own. And if they were no-brainers, if they were worthy of the 5th pick in the draft, Corey Davis, and Corey Davis looked like Julio Jones, Corey Davis would be on this roster with the second contract. There would be no Julio Jones. So it was really Corey Davis not living up to the 5th pick in the draft. If these guys were, if Evans moves on, Adoree Jackson was not worthy of the first-round pick and a big second contract. If they were worthy of it, typically you're holding on to your own, right? Those are yours.
Of course.
So it's more about not really the salary cap. It's more about they didn't pan out. They weren't as good as where they took them. And so because you're going to make that work with your own and all the hours you put in, and you're going to shave elsewhere, right? You're going to shave the other parts of your roster, not your own. But unfortunately for them, they've come to the conclusion, maybe they weren't worthy of where we picked them, and they're not deserving of that big second contract. At least not from us.
But that's the thing, that those guys have gotten the big contract at their next place. We don't know how Corey Davis is going to do. We don't know how Adoree Jackson's going to do. We don't know. We do know that Jack Conklin had a pretty good year.
He did
last year. So time will tell. I think every GM would prefer, though, to sign their own guys. It's really interesting to me what's happened with those guys. Rashaan Evans might be the next candidate that gets into this, right, where he may not sign the next contract with the Titans. That's a lot of first-round picks that have come and gone, not getting the second contract. It seems like, and I'd have to look at specifically all the picks for the Colts, but certainly philosophically, they like to keep those guys and sign more of them to the second contract. It doesn't always have to be your first-round pick. It's probably easier to make the second contract work with a lower-round draft pick, right? Because there's that fifth-year option is not as expensive a lot of times, and maybe you find more bargains. Kevin Byard, right? They got him locked up. But I love studying how the teams differ on how they try to put their rosters together. How much do they gamble on free agency? How much of their roster is homegrown? You certainly have to draft well to have a good homegrown roster, right? You don't want these guys if you didn't draft, you don't just sign them for the second contract just out of principle, right? You have to draft well enough that those guys, you want them back.
I think it's easier to operate in the NFL. Even though I understand there are challenges with the hard salary cap, but I think it's easier to operate with basically 1-year contracts as opposed to the other leagues, National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, the NBA, where they're on guaranteed contracts. Because me personally, I think you have figured this out by now. I'm not envious of general managers that have to sign or choose to sign long, and I mean very long contracts, because I think it is a huge, huge gamble, and there is no way for anyone to know how it's going to play out 8 years, over an 8-year window. In this case, 8 years, which is the max in the NHL. I just think as a GM, man, it is hard to know for sure how that's going to play out, because I think more times than not, a gamble like that is going to end up biting you in the rear end than it working out. And, next 8 years are going to be the greatest 8 years ever, and everybody's going to say, wow, what a great contract you did, right? It's just hard. Like, Pekka Rinne's contract was what, 6 years, $6 million? Is that right?
7.
7 for
7 for 7.
7 for 7. So 7 for 49.
I think. Pretty sure that's right.
Rarely do you get it's like where the entire contract played out and everybody felt great about it and everybody said, attaboy, David Poile, way to go. That was a great because typically, when you get into, let's say, even before the halfway point, or you get into the halfway point of that long guaranteed contract, more times than not, you have people talking about that contract that doesn't seem like it's paying dividends, right? Or, yikes, it's kind of worked to this point, or it has worked to this point, but now there's huge question marks. What's the second half of the contract going to look like? So I'm not envious of GMs that have to deal with guaranteed contracts for long periods of time, because I think it's hard to make that work. I think in the NFL, I would rather operate under those conditions where really you're going year by year, and yes, there's a lot of dead money. Yes, there's a lot of big guaranteed contract that could crush you with the cap. I mean, that's what we've talked about with the Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, right? They can be unhappy, but because there's so much dead money coming against them, I mean, we talked about with Russell Wilson. Like, there may have been issues, but the reality is Seattle really couldn't do anything. And really, I don't know how how the Packers are going to do it. When you talk about like $39 million dead money against the cap, who can really make that work? It's hard. But overall, I think their challenges are much less in the NFL than the others with the guaranteed contracts, because I think it's a hard gamble for GMs to really forecast 7 or 8 years with a player and hope and pray that it all works out for that money. All right, we'll come back. This is what I know to end the second hour of the program. We've got a prize attached to it. We would love for you to jump in there and participate, well, we need you to jump in there and participate. 615-737-1025 is our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Your phone calls next.
Some things you just know.
I have to know.
Do you think everybody knows?
When you know, you just know. It's time to set the record straight. Join the fun on This Is What I Know with Darren, Daunic, and Chase.
All right, we want to know what you know. It's real easy. You just call in and tell us what you know. You can take it however you want. 615-737-1025. That's our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. A pair of tickets on the line for the best TWIC. It's the ultimate social experience. The Blended Festival, August 13th and 14th at First Horizon Park. live performances by Lil Jon, hello, Matt Snell, Blanco Brown, Bryce Vine, and a whole lot more. Massive 100-foot wine tasting tent, culinary activations by Nashville's hottest chefs, plus relaxing wellness lounge, a VIP village, and a lot more. You can win tickets by calling in and giving us your best This Is What I Know. But if you would just like to purchase tickets, they're on sale right now at blendedfestival.com. Willie, do you want me to start or would you like to start?
Whichever way you want to go. I'm ready anytime.
Okay, take it away.
All right, well, I would like to say, this is what I know, that Jane Castor, the mayor of Tampa Bay, is certainly not my style. She has not ever listened to Coach Willie and philosophies of not ever putting the cart before the horse, respecting the opponent. Let's just take a listen to her thoughts before Tampa Bay embarked on trying to get the sweep of the Montreal Canadiens last night. Now remember, Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup last year in the bubble, so they couldn't have any fans. They couldn't have even their friends and family with them to celebrate. So that's in the backdrop of this as they are about to play Game 4 in Montreal. And once again, their friends, their family, the wives, none of them could be in the stands, could not go to Montreal. So this is the backdrop as she is addressed with the question. The mayor of Tampa Bay.
Here's what we would like. What we would like is for the Lightning to take it a little bit easy, to give the Canadians just the smallest break, allow them to win one at home, and then bring it back to the Amalie Arena for the final and the winning of the Stanley Cup. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but they are playing some amazing, amazing hockey.
We don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Well,
just take it a little easy.
Well, she just did.
You never, ever, ever do that. You never do that. Now, can you imagine, now that Montreal won the game last night in overtime, that they come back to Tampa and they lose tomorrow? The heat she's going to take, as she should, because you can't say that. This is sports. You win whenever you can win. Now, John Cooper, he was bristling, right? He was like, no. That thinking is not going to make it into our locker room. But they lost. So now it's still a thing.
But that's what she
right?
asked for. She asked for them to lose.
She got what she asked. But this is one of those, be careful what you wish for. Okay, so let's just see what happens in Game 5. But either way, that was not a Coach Willie moment right there. You don't ever do that.
I thought of Coach Willie when I heard this clip, and I knew that Coach Willie was bristling at this notion. I am not endorsing her message, nor am I on her side. But with that being said, I think like the only time it's ever happened in Stanley Cup final history was like 80 years ago. So stats are on her side that it's happened, I think, one time in Stanley Cup final history, down 0-3 and come back and win it. So, and like I said, I think that was in the 50s, I believe. So it was a long, maybe 70 years ago.
And we know the Lightning are way better than the Canadians. They're a better team. They're going to win this thing, barring a miracle. But
you're not supposed to. I get it. You're not supposed to say that out loud.
Don't ever say that.
Like, say it privately. Don't say it out loud. I get it.
Right. And I know why she said it, but she clearly has not been a coach or, running. You just don't do that.
No. Kind of like when I was coaching a charity basketball game, and I told the team, "Don't go get hurt. It's for charity," and they're like, "Don't say that."
Ooh,
I'm like, yeah. I was like, "Okay, lesson learned. I'll never say that again. You don't tell players, don't go get hurt." Big mistake. That was a long time ago. I've learned. Yeah. I've never said that again.
Did you tell the guy at the media hockey game that we played in on ice not to get hurt?
No, I didn't. But
I
should have.
Separated his shoulder or broke his collarbone skating around on the ice with the media people like you and I who are statues.
My advice to him would have been, don't showboat at a media opportunity.
Yeah, that was
with the
probably
Predators.
a good idea. That would have been good advice.
Willie, this is what I know. A World Cup qualifying game or match will be at Nissan Stadium. We'll be right here in Nashville on September 5th. USA versus Canada. How about that?
That's going to be awesome. Can you imagine the Predator guys from Canada representing?
Oh, my goodness. That is
against
going
the
to
U.S. guys from the Predator? That's going to be awesome.
The question is, will they break the attendance record? What do you think? I think, what is it?
Ooh.
Is the biggest one they've had, I think, 47,000, I think?
I was thinking that in my mind, 46 to 47,000.
The CONCACAF, I believe I was there for that. I think that was the one. CONCACAF, sorry. What did I say? CONCACAF?
Don't forget about the K.
CONCACAF.
The extra K. CONCACAF.
The game against Panama, we were there, and it was almost 50,000. I think it was 47.
No, that was
something.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that the debacle with the concession stands weren't open and everybody was complaining? Or was that a different soccer game? There were two that were in that range, right?
I lost track of what back in those days. That was 20. Okay. I think that was 4 or 5 years ago. 2017.
Yes. Some things have been addressed since then, but that was
changed.
Yeah. But that was the story that came out of the game, unfortunately, or one of those games. There were two soccer games, if I remember, that had.
And it took people forever to get in. Forever.
Oh, yes.
There was a lot of video going viral of people waiting in line because gates were not even open. So, yeah. Hopefully that will not be the case. I feel good that will not be the case in 2021. But that was really cool. So, also, this is what I know. Really sad story coming out about the Columbus Blue Jackets goaltender. Man, that was just heartbreaking to read that on his accident that killed him on July 4th. So just bad. Very, very bad, very sad. Nice of Montreal to, remember him last night before they dropped the puck for Game 4.
Yeah, this young man, his name is Kivlenix. He, I believe, backed up. He might have even come into a game that the Predators played against Columbus this year. He was basically their third goalie. Only 24 years of age, from Latvia. And if you've ever watched international competition in hockey with Latvia, it's a very, very small country. I think there's only 2 or 3 million people that live there. But they really get behind their team. They have great fans. And there's a handful of Latvian players that have come over to play in the NHL. And there's a couple on Columbus's team.
Yeah.
Elvis Merzlikins, one of their goalies is another one from Latvia. But so he was up in Michigan with his goaltender coach, Manny Legacy, who's a familiar name to Predator fans. He used to play for the Red Wings, and the very, very first playoff series the Predators ever played was against the Red Wings, and Manny Legacy was the goalie. But it was a fireworks mishap. Details are not completely out yet. I was reading about this morning. The Detroit News has, I think, the best account of what happened, and they're still investigating, but something went wrong, got pointed in the wrong direction, and there was some sort of firework that went off. He was trying to get out of the hot tub, and he had a lot of trauma to his heart and lungs, and it killed him. It's just a painful, sad reminder of what can happen.
Well, he had head trauma,
right, at
too,
a gathering
right?
like that.
I think
that's what initially was reported, that it was a head trauma, that he fell.
Right.
And even Columbus released a statement talking about that.
Yes.
But when the autopsy came out, they said it was directly from the impact of a firework that was that went off. Whether it actually hit him or it was the reverberation. I can't remember the words that they used, but it was not from head trauma. It was trauma to the lungs and heart. So either way, I mean, some people would say, well, what's the difference?
It resulted
tragic
in a
way.
tragic,
yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's terrible.
But, we do, on the 4th of July, the stats are out there, right? The homemade, when you're doing fireworks at home, there's a very, very high danger level. You have to be extra, extra careful. We don't know. They don't have the details of exactly why it went off, but there was a big gathering there. And unfortunately, it claimed his life. So too bad. He probably would have competed for the backup, they were saying, this year, because they had 2 other goalies, Korpisalo and Merzlikins. They're probably going to trade one, and he was probably the next candidate to be the backup there. So a promising career, and by all accounts, a tremendous young man that people really love dearly up there. I cannot imagine what that would be like, to have happen. Just awful.
Let's go to the phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Nate, what do you know?
This is what I know, fellas. Y'all are about to shun me. But I learned over the weekend that the Mets-Yankees rivalry is not the Subway restaurant rivalry. It's the Subway's underground, the transportation system.
You thought it was because
you
of
thought it was about the sandwiches?
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't put two and two together, but yeah, for some reason I thought the Subway rivalry. Why
Subway series? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, series. Why is it about the restaurants? And then I was talking with my future father-in-law, and he pointed out it's the transportation system. So. Yeah.
Thank goodness he was there to
Nate,
point that out, Nate. Because
you get credit for admitting that. I mean, honestly, for coming on and admitting that, you get some extra credit for that because you could have kept that to yourself. I can appreciate that.
I would not have gone on the radio to admit that.
Be honest, I wouldn't have either. But you know what? Good for him. Let's go to Brian. Brian, what do you know?
This is what I know, gentlemen. Nashville SC needs a new pre-match song. That rubbish that they play before their matches straight sucks. It is demotivating. You go in there and you're trying to get pumped up and you get out of your seat and cheer these dudes on, and they play this depressing crap. It sounds like something that millennials hang themselves to in their parents' basement.
Wow.
What?
Whoa.
Wait a minute.
That's a little.
That's what
it can't be that bad.
Come on, Brian.
It's bad.
Come on.
Jeez. Okay. So
he doesn't like the pregame music, okay?
Not a fan of.
Hey, we do have to give a shout out though to Soccer Moses, who knew he could play the guitar. He did the guitar riff the other day. They've had John Oates and they've had the guy Dave Mustaine. They've had some big time guitar people come out and play the pregame riff. Soccer Moses came out, did the job.
Well
that
done.
was awesome.
Well done. All right,
Keep
we'll come
winning.
back. No doubt. We'll come back. We will start the third hour by heading east. We'll bring in our man, Vince Ferrara. We'll do that next. Third hour, Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope everybody's having a good day thus far. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic here with you. Chase off today. Elijah Campbell manning the board at our Wholesale Inc. Game Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. We head east Mondays at this time. We're doing it today. We were off yesterday. Bring in Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal, WNML there in Knoxville. At Vince Sports on Twitter. He now joins us. Vinny, how was your fourth?
It was good. It wasn't anything eventful. It was hugging and reassuring my cute little mini golden doodle who, like a lot of dogs, just terrified of all the fireworks. And you know how it is. The fireworks aren't just there on 4th of July. It's 2 days before. It's 2 to 3 days after. And it's a lot of needless angst on our poor pets. So that's kind of the deal.
Yep, the 4th and New Year's Eve, just not friends for dogs. Not friends at all. We had a good conversation with Tim Brando in the first hour of the program about NIL, which is upon us as we sit here on July 6th. So almost a week in of name, image, and likeness. We've seen all the stories that are out there. And really how this is going to change everything moving forward. There was a story or a tweet that came out I read earlier in the show about a Miami booster that said he's already donated north of $500,000 to the football program for the roster. In other words, to figure out endorsements for the entire football roster and how more donations are coming from him and that he wants to return them to the U. What does that mean? I don't know. I think we all remember. We've seen the 30 for 30s on the U and what was going on around that Miami, Florida program. What do you make of what's happened thus far? I mean, Hersey Miller, who signed, it was a great story, signed to play basketball here at Tennessee State for Brian Collins. We had Hersey Miller and Master P, his father, on our show. It was a great conversation. He signed a $2 million deal last week. How do you think this is going to change things moving forward?
Well, obviously there's the potential of really getting boosters way too involved, and the opportunity for enhanced cheating. Let's be honest, that existed prior to name, image, and likeness, but now you're looking into getting uncharted territory in terms of accountability. It's kind of the Wild West right now because the NCAA didn't get out ahead of this and was trying to get Congress to bail them out at the last minute. So it's just different rules, different schools, different states, and so it's kind of wide open right now for a lot. Now there's some parameters for the schools, and sure, there's going to be a lot of mess ups for sure. Developments like Hersey Miller, like you mentioned, I kind of like that stuff. We're starting to see some of those kind of deals not go to just the star quarterback at the power programs that we were talking about. And the fact that there is money and opportunity for a lot of student athletes, maybe the most interesting example at Tennessee is a walk-on wide receiver named Grant Freerking. I don't know if you guys have heard his story, but he owns and operates a landscaping company called Metro.
I was reading about this. This is really fascinating right here, and what a great opportunity that he has. But continue.
He's been running this business. He started when he was 15. And he's grown it. He already has a multi-million-dollar company. And he's, I think, like 23, 24. He was on our afternoon show. He did Feinbaum. He's just getting inundated with lots of interviews. He'd be fascinating for you guys to talk to as well at some point. And they install pine, straw, and mulch, and they do mostly commercial because they've grown so big, and they did it just on word of mouth and doing things the right way and being nice and showing up on time. So the company has grown, and now what he's doing is he's using Tennessee players to endorse his company on social media. And he's also doing it's opened the doors for him to do some other things. I saw a tweet, he was endorsing a Mexican restaurant. And some of this they're not just like these big contracts. Some of them is just like, hey, you can do a once a month post or once a week post for our business, and we'll send you $50 or whatever the rates are. So there's a lot of wide ranging things that athletes can do, and it's not just going to the star athletes as we thought. And I think, yes, there's a ton of issues that can come from this, but the overriding positives to me of having athletes be able to get some revenue out of the many millions of dollars that everyone else is getting, I think is a positive. And oftentimes using what their power is as a student athlete, using that to make some money and set them up and also figure out things for down the road. But I think there's so many more positives to it than we can't do this because, it might bring in more cheating, as if there's no cheating already. So I do think it's a positive, and I like the fact that the money is going to a lot of athletes and not just a couple I think was kind of the narrative that it would just go to. It's given a lot of different athletes opportunities to make some money.
Willie's sitting down there in Hoover, Alabama right now. We're on the doorstep of SEC Media Days, which didn't happen last year in person. It is going to be back to happening in person this year. And I asked this question, and some people said, who cares? Nobody cares about that. Actually, people do care. I know, and some people don't care. I get it. It's usually about the results. But a coach does have to handle himself a certain way, and not everybody's equipped to be on that stage. That is, in Knoxville, UT football, SEC football coach. It's a pretty darn big stage, and I think Tennessee has failed miserably with Jeremy Pruitt. Didn't exactly do great with Butch Jones with all the cliches and just how much fun they were made. You get made fun of, and probably all this would have been quieter if they would have won more football games. But how do you think Josh Heupel is going to handle SEC Media Days? Who do you think he's going to take down his first class of players to Hoover? How do you think that's all going to play out?
Well, I think Josh Heupel will do fine. He's handled himself really well and comes across as very believable, and he's willing to talk about players, which is always very nice when media are asking you in many different ways from different outlets about your team. And Jeremy Pruitt was just not willing to give a whole lot of information while he was there. So that can get frustrating, and people just kind of give up asking after a while, and then you got a very quiet, sleepy session, and then no one is hyping you up. I think Josh Heupel, he's not going to go out and go over the top and try to impress, but I think he's going to answer some questions, and I think he'll come across as real and make an impact. Now, that only has, as you guys know, especially you, Darren, because you pay attention to how people handle themselves in these media settings, and rightfully so. That only has so much of a lifespan. That has an expiration date. But this is entering his first year, so I think it can be a positive for him. And all of these issues, name, image, likeness, things like that, I don't think he's going to shy away. Mental health, I think we're going to hear discussion about that from a lot of teams. He's not going to shy away from any of that, so I think he'll do well. As for who he would take, I think the three most likely candidates, in my opinion, are Velus Jones Jr., wide receiver. He is, I've mentioned this to you guys before, there is no bigger hype man for the University of Tennessee and the opportunity. I mean, he is so excited about being here at UT, the former USC wide receiver and return specialist. So I think he's the perfect guy to go, and he's a starter. Another one would be Matthew Butler, who is a veteran, well-spoken defensive lineman. And then another one probably be Alontae Taylor. Alontae Taylor does a lot of the leadership stuff on the football team and the university. He's taking a bigger role there. He's probably projected as a starting corner. And he's also very well-spoken in-state kid. So I think those would be the most likely candidates. I mean, there could be a couple others. Maybe they bring a Cade Mays. But Cade is a little bit more soft-spoken. But to me, those would be Jones, Butler, Taylor are veteran guys. Maybe not sexy big-name guys that everyone else is going to be running to, but I think guys that will do well there, and I think the most likely, if they do 3, who knows, they may cut back to 2, but those would be the top candidates in my opinion.
Vince Ferrara is with us, 99.1 The Sports Animal, joins us every week. And Vince, you do about as well as anybody at doing inventory, who's coming in, who's coming out of the transfer portal. I know there's some action on both sides for Tennessee football here recently. But before you tell us the individuals, what's the scoreboard reading right now? Incoming, outgoing. I'm picturing like a big, are you going to get the train schedule? You go to Grand Central Station, you look up all the departures and arrivals. Like the transfer portal's got to look similar here.
You have to keep looking at the monitor, right?
Right.
And then
you stare at it for a long time.
Right. You walk away like 10, 15 minutes later, like, wait, let me go check again.
Right.
That's kind of the deal because it is so active, especially at Tennessee, because no one has had more of them. It's crazy. Here are the totals, the numbers. If you count, and I do believe he's on scholarship, Chase McGrath, the USC place kicker transfer. If you count him, Tennessee's had 10 incoming transfers from the portal this offseason. Only counting scholarship guys that weren't kicked off the team, they've had 26 leave now. They've also had 3 kicked off. That would be Kevon Bennett, who's headed to Arkansas State. Emmett Gooden was kicked off. I don't believe he's got a landing spot. And then Caden Salter, the true freshman that was released, and then he hit the transfer portal. So it's really hard to compare. Unless you're going through and you're taking those same things into account, it's hard to say. It's hard to go through everybody and say, oh, well, they only have 16, not 23 that might be listed on the portal listing. So everybody can vary in terms of the numbers quoted, but I think that's the better way to look at it is scholarship guys and ones that weren't already kicked off the team. You know, they most recently brought in a DB from Alabama, and Brandon Turnage, who was a pretty highly rated kid, and didn't get a ton of playing time at Alabama, but he was a 4-star kid and has good height, 6'1", 186, ball skills, can compete at corner. He was going to go to Georgia, and then that didn't last very long, and then ended up going to, and I think what happened at Georgia was Georgia got a transfer from Clemson that was really highly rated, so that kind of bumped him off in terms of the playing time he expected. I think there's a great opportunity for playing time at Tennessee, so that's why Turnage comes in as the 10th. And then the 26th to depart was Darrell Middleton, who was experienced defensive lineman, a guy with a great body that was a local kid, and he's bounced around, junior college, things like that, got into trouble in the offseason. Not really a surprise that he is not sticking around. Just never really developed into the potential that he had. So that's kind of the numbers. They've got 10 incoming, 26 outgoing, and just a whole lot of new on this team for sure.
So with the depth, you pointed out. I mean, you would think 10 out or 20. You're a net minus 16 if I've got the math right there. I was not a math major, but so that's got to create some depth issues, right? Tell us about where those show up right now on the current roster.
Well, believe it or not, despite that, they're only down, to my count, they're only down about 3 scholarships under the total of 85. So because you always are going to be at a starting point above 85 with your incoming class, and then last year there was the guys that were able to have that year of eligibility. So you even with that minus, because you had your signing class, although they had 4 let out of their national letter of intent, and so a couple of even true freshmen hit the transfer portal, or in the case of Caden Salter, the quarterback, was dismissed. You didn't get as much out of that signing class, but they're still a little bit under. Now, there's still time for guys to take off, but I think this is pretty close to where they're going to be. And, I think the biggest area where you're looking at it and saying, whoa, that number is kind of low, and that's the defensive line. Whereas a couple of months ago, or when Josh Heupel first took over, you thought, okay, a lot of experience there, a lot of games played, pretty good numbers. Well, now they're down to just 11 scholarship defensive linemen, and 2 of them are incoming transfers, DeJoun Terry from Kansas and Caleb Tremblay from USC. You have a true freshman offensive and defensive lineman, Amari McNeil from Georgia, that you expect to be on the D-line. And then you got the other 8 that have played for you. It's a small group, especially if you're planning to do more 4-down linemen. Now, you can compensate a little bit with the linebackers, with the hybrid rush ends when they go 3-4-4-3, because there'll be some flexibility there. So some of those outside backers put their hand down. Now you can use an extra body from that linebacking group to help your DL. But it's not ideal in terms of depth there. And then, wide receiver isn't a big group either. You've got Javonte Payton, who's a grad transfer from Mississippi State, and then Kamen Marley, a true freshman. And then you have 8 others that were back. It's also not a big number when you're going to use a lot more wide receivers and multi-wide receiver sets, 3, 4, 5 wides at times. So those are the 2 areas where it seems a little bit thin in terms of numbers.
Okay, that covers the transfer portal. And I feel like from this day forward, not from this day, but in this era forward, we're always going to look at both the transfer portal right alongside of the next recruiting class, but you're following that as well. I think a lot of people, I don't pay close attention, but if you're scrolling Twitter, you see various schools, they're getting commits. So what about the Tennessee commitments? I know they've got a couple of ones that they claimed earlier last week.
Well, yeah, and it was a stretch. In about 2 days, they got Brandon Turnage, the transfer from Alabama, plus 2 commits in about a 24-ish hour period. So it was very busy last week. And one of them that Tennessee added to the group was Jordan Phillips. He's a defensive lineman from Ocoee, Florida, 3-star kid. Anytime you can add bodies at that position, it's a positive. And then the other is Masai Reddick, an offensive tackle from Detroit. He's also a 3-star, big size, and that's kind of one of the things that jumped out to me. They saw him in a camp and really liked him, offered him, and he committed. But he weighs 330 pounds, so he must have good mobility in their opinion, because with the pace that you're going to go with, I think you're going to see some of the offensive linemen trim down, and maybe that's the plan. But if they see a lot in these guys early, this is what they're going to have to do, guys, is they're going to have to, with the NCAA stuff that's looming, they're going to have to identify some lower-rated guys early and then have them be loyal to them. We've already seen a number of the guys in this group of 8 commits right now have their ratings move up a little bit. As more time goes on, I think that will continue to happen. But they're not going to be able to win the battles that they typically would have a shot to. They better win some, but they're, at least until they get past this NCAA stuff, they're going to have to identify early and hope that those guys really keep developing and they stay loyal to Tennessee. So that's kind of where they're at. Really the star of the class right now is the quarterback, Taven Jackson from Indiana. He's competing on that Elite 11 circuit and done really well. He's another one that may have his rating continue to rise. Real talented 6'4" quarterback from Indiana. So that's kind of the group right now. Fans right now overall I think are a little underwhelmed because you see a lot of the 3 of the 5 stars that are highlighted rather than hoping for the 4s and 5s. There's just not many of those guys right now as it sits for Tennessee.
Neyland is operating at 100% capacity this fall. Is that what I saw earlier? I think last week they put that out there.
Yep, they have made that declaration, correct.
Interesting. All right, real quick before we end this, I'm getting ready to talk about McGregor and Poirier, the rubber match 3 with DraftKings here going to the break. Who do you think is going to win?
Dustin Poirier. To me, Conor McGregor, I always still wonder about where he is in terms of his commitment level when you hear him talking about so many other things. I think Dustin Poirier, with his power, his chin, I think to me he's the better overall fighter right now. Maybe Conor at his peak was at a higher level than Poirier, but right now I think Poirier is the more complete and the more dangerous MMA fighter. Certainly McGregor can catch him, but I would favor Dustin Poirier to win.
You're saying maybe McGregor's belly may be a little too full, huh? He's worth about $200 million set for life.
Yeah. I think he's good in terms of the pocket and the direct deposits into his account. It's just where's his mind in between the ears? That's where is he putting in enough work to be great at MMA again? That's the unknown.
Yep. Good stuff as always. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next Monday.
You guys do the same. Appreciate you.
Vince Ferraro, the sports animal there in Knoxville, at Vince Sports. You can follow him on Twitter. Indeed, I'm going to talk about McGregor and Poirier. Part 3, it's all set. UFC 264. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, has a knockout offer for this weekend's fight. DraftKings is offering 264-1 odds on a knockout in the first round during Saturday's main event. Yes, it's the rubber match, and if it ends in a first-round knockout, you walk away with the cash. Just pick the main event fighter you think will win in a first-round knockout, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 264-1 odds on that fighter. That's right, $1 your money on McGregor or Poirier to win a first-round knockout, and if that happens, you win $264. There's no better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than put your money where your mouth is, and that's with DraftKings Sportsbook. Don't worry if MMA isn't for you. They also have great odds and promotions on basketball, hockey, and so much more. It's safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. All you have to do is go download that top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code 1025GAME, and when you sign up, turn $1 into $264 when you bet on the main event fighter to win by a first-round knockout. Place your bet. Watch the fist fly this weekend. That code again, 1025GAME. Turn $1 into $264, and that's only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Remember, you must be 21 years of age or older. Tennessee only. New customers only. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you're someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Good stuff from Vince, as always. By the way, don't forget this Thursday, a chance to participate in Nashville SC Pick to Click. Even though on This Is What I Know, caller called in and said, Brian, I'm not a fan of their pregame music. Brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores a goal in the game on Thursday night, you win a prize pack and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Remember, this Thursday morning at 9:45, Nashville SC will be hosting Atlanta at Nissan Stadium on Thursday. So a chance for Pick to Click. That'll be Thursday morning at 9:45. Back here on the show, Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic. You know, we were talking about our conversation with Tim Brando, and in that conversation with the college playoffs and the expansion was this, you know, the other bowls, the secondary bowls. And, of course, we've got one that's been here since 1998, Music City Bowl, that we love and we support, and we always enjoy our conversations with Scott Ramsey, Willie, and you know, we've also talked about what would it take, and we talked about this with Scott. It was the day we were at the Nashville Superspeedway, right before the truck race that night and before the big NASCAR Cup weekend, and what it would take for them to be in the rotation. Well, what do you make of what Brando said, and how do you feel as we've had a little time to kind of sit and reflect and let it all digest and kind of see? It seems like it's all headed that way. Question is, how do we stay relevant? How do we stay in the mix?
I think I'm looking at 3 interviews that we did, Darren. The one we just did with Tim Brando earlier in the show, which I thought was a great conversation. We had one with Butch Spiriton last week.
Yep.
Convention of Visitors. And, of course, Scott Ramsey right after the news hit about this proposal for 12 teams. I think you could really see a picture formulating here, just trying to fight for your turf, right? On one hand, Tim pointed out all of the great things that we're going to get with the 12-team playoff. It's going to be exciting. There's going to be a connector between the college conference championship games and then the start of the playoffs. It's going to be fantastic. But he expressed, and this is where I think we have to try to figure out what's going to happen. He expressed a lot of enthusiasm, Tim did, about having that first round in home stadiums, right? The 5 versus 12, the 4 teams that don't get a bye, right? There will be some games that first weekend that, according to the proposal, would be home games for the higher seed, right? But if that happens, then how... This is what I don't know. Unless you have losers of that game eligible to go play in bowl games, which is something I asked Scott Ramsey about, then I think you're really hard-pressed to get an attractive matchup between 2 teams that really would be excited to come to the Music City Bowl as it exists, right? So that format, home games in the first round on home sites, I think that really hurts the Music City Bowl. If, on the other hand, and you heard Tim Brando throw this out there as well, if they decide down the road to have those games to be played in bowl sites and Nashville can get in the rotation for one of those, then it might be a good thing for the Music City Bowl long term, right? Because even if you didn't get it every year, at least every so often you would be hosting a college football playoff game, which would be fantastic, right? That could be a huge event, even if the odd years you would have to make do with a lesser matchup. But you see what I'm saying? Yeah, I think I heard some concern from both Butch and Scott that, hey, this may be great for Nashville if we can get in there, but if it doesn't, what are those bowl games going to look like? I think everybody's wondering.
Look, I took away from Butch exactly what I took away from Scott. And the bottom line is those guys talk to the right people. Those guys are talking to people all the time. And this is a recording. Hashtag play, every time we've ever had this discussion, at least on my end. And we all are on the same page on this. All this is for naught until we figure out the stadium situation. Like, Nashville is what it is. We are on everybody's list. Everybody wants to come here. There is no yeah buts for Nashville anymore, except for this yeah but is, Yet we're not going to do it in January, or late December, early January, whatever the time frame is. However, this is all going to play out. I don't know exactly how they're going to do this. Are they going to go later with this? Is this going to go to more like late January? I don't know how they do a 12-team. But all this is for naught until we figure out, and I'm not talking about renovating. I'm not talking about until they change the situation. They're not going to put it and take a chance where weather is going to be an issue for a playoff
But you're
game
trying
in
to preserve
football.
an event. You're trying to preserve that game that's existing, right? The Music City Bowl
but there's nothing
is
at
going
stake.
to continue.
There's nothing at stake except for the two schools, and somebody wins and somebody gets crowned the Music
I know.
City Bowl champ and the other.
But that's my point, though. If we have this college football playoff going on during bowl season, do you think that those bowls can survive? Or will they go to another level down of significance to the point where it just won't be worth having?
Well, I think
let's take the
very
Music Bowl.
clear.
It's December 30th, right? Let's just take that date. The game has been played on December 30th an odd number of times. Maybe it's the 29th one year. I feel like it's been December 31st. Yeah, it's been the 31st.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say that's on a Wednesday. And earlier, you've got college football playoff games going on the weekend before and then the next weekend, right? And in the middle of the week, that's where they're going to show, in theory, some of these other bowls that aren't in the playoff rotation. What's going to be the appetite for those bowls? And what kind of teams are we talking about? These are teams that didn't make the playoffs. There's going to be a scramble to get the leftovers, right? Teams 13, 14, 15, 16, on down. Is the Music City Bowl going to get those teams? Like, what's the record of those teams going to be? Are they going to be SEC teams? Like, what's left over if you have 12 going to the playoffs?
Well,
like, those 12 are off the board.
Yeah, but I've said many times that there's too much. It's oversaturated. We've got these bowls. There's hardly nobody there. It's two schools. Nobody, other than their fan bases, honestly, nobody cares. But the reality is they do care. And I'll tell you why they care. Because you know the answer to this. Especially today, with it being so prevalent in our country. It's no longer taboo, okay? It's no longer everybody's favorite bookie, okay, that you're not allowed to talk about that was going on in the neighborhood. It's now you can just get on your phone in a state like Tennessee, angle, which we used to have these conversations with Floyd Reese back a long time ago, and we would tell him how fantasy football and gambling has grown the popularity of the NFL, and he just, old football guy was just laughing and like, give me a break, guys. Like it's, people just love football. That's what they've grown up on, and yes, that element is in play, sure, of course. But he just refused to believe that fantasy football, because he didn't even understand fantasy football. All he knew was reality football. That's what he had been involved in his whole life. Like, what does he need fantasy when he's been living the life his whole life, around the game, in the game? So he didn't understand that element. But remember, this is 2 decades ago. This is 15, 20 years ago. The landscape has changed, and obviously it's really changed in less than a year. And now you've got an NFL team in Vegas, and now you've got, Vegas has got an NHL team they've had for 4 years now, and now they've got an NFL team that's going into year 2, and it won't be long before they'll have an MLB team, and they'll probably have an NBA team. It'll be a 4-sports-town team, or 4-sports-team town, which, back 15, 20 years ago, once again, taboo. Oh, you could never have that in Vegas. All the cheating and the insider, information, insider trading on games will be through the roof. All that stuff that we used to say. Just like the NCAA used to say about, we could never have a playoff system because they got finals week. We can't do that. Give me a break.
Well, we know that looks like it's going by the wayside. But I'm saying if you take 12 teams off the board instead of 4, so there's 8 more teams that aren't in the bowl games. They're in the playoffs, and the first round is played on home sites. That leaves a big gap, and then there's going to be a fight to get the next teams 13 on, right? And there's some years where even the Music City Bowl, who is, that's a mid-tier bowl, right? That's not a lower-tier bowl, but they still, on a given year, may not get a super attractive matchup. But what are your odds now? They go down if you can't get into that playoff rotation.
And that's
right?
what
There's
I'm telling you. It's irrelevant.
You're more.
It's
I
really
don't think it's irrelevant.
Because
what if you can't find an SEC team?
Of course you can. Of course you can. What do you mean? I mean, how many SEC teams do you think are going to be playing in a 12-team playoffs? Half the league? That's not going to be the case. I mean,
yeah, but they don't get the first pick. After that, there's other bowl games that are trying to survive as well. There's Charlotte and Orlando and all of these other bowl games that are going to try to make it work if they're not in the playoffs, right? The Outback Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, the Gator Bowl, they're all going to be still out there trying to survive. They're not all going to have playoff games.
After the 4
but if those games host playoff games, then we're talking, right?
After the 4 teams today, we've already seen it. Like, who cares? Like, that's why kids are leaving, because they're like, who cares? This bowl game means nothing. I'm out.
I know. So that's a factor too. That's making it harder and harder to make these bowl games work.
Still watch. They still
right
put
now
these
they're
bowl
watching
games on because the networks are still willing to air and pay big bucks for games that don't matter because people will watch. People will gamble on these who care games. They just will. We already know that. So the reason I say they're not going away, because I used to say, like, what are we doing? Like, some of these bowls have to go away, and some of them have. Because, you had some cities hosting like 2 and 3 bowls. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you why are you going to the same market 2 or 3 times? Like that, you shouldn't be doing that. So will some go away? Yeah, they already have. But overall, they're going to stick around because it's just like the Pro Bowl. We can make fun of it all we want, and we can laugh and mock it and say it's a joke, which it is. But guess what? Every year we've said that. Every year, and that's been going on for how long? It's not even a tackle game. It's a flag football game. What happens? People watch. For whatever reason, we can't understand. It's a terrible game. People watch. Their ratings are outstanding for a game that we make fun of. So it's very clear the Pro Bowl, even though they've kind of tried and it's been talked about maybe going away, it hasn't. And I don't think it will, because you know why? The networks will still pay for it and people will still watch. And the same thing for these bowl games, these secondary bowl games that will not be a part of the playoffs. And Who knows? Maybe an SEC team doesn't come here. But if they don't, 2 teams that come to Music City Bowl, people will still show up, people will still watch, and people will still gamble on it. And so
would you rather
the networks will pay for it?
Okay, well let me throw it give it to you this way, because I'm a little more worried obviously than you are about this. But would you vote to have the first round on home sites, or would you vote for those games to be played as bowl games, neutral sites, which would satisfy a lot of these bowl cities that want to make sure they have relevant games? Because that takes that takes 4 attractive bowl games out of the picture if those 4 games are instead played on home sites, right? If let's just say it's Michigan versus Auburn in the first round a given year, 5 versus 12, and it's at Michigan. If that game is played in the big house up there, that's going to be a great atmosphere. It's going to be full. It's going to be a home game for Michigan. We'd all watch. Huge playoff game. Awesome. But if that game is played in Atlanta as the Chick-fil-A Bowl, well, now the Chick-fil-A Bowl's got a great game, right? Huge. But now if it's not, then the Chick-fil-A Bowl's got to go grab the next tier of teams that didn't make the playoffs and then on down the line. You see what I'm saying? So that might be the reason. If my dog is in the hunt as a bowl game, I'm rooting like heck. I'm going to try to find a way that those games are played as bowl games and not home games. Even though as a fan, I don't know what I'd choose. I think I might rather watch a great atmosphere in Ann Arbor, right? That could be, what's the better visual? What's the better atmosphere? So which way would you go? Which way would you want? what's best for the game.
Well, once again, if you're going to do it that way, then you are then saying that weather does not matter for your playoff game.
Yes.
Okay, if you're going to let Michigan host a college football playoff game, then you're saying weather does not – the elements are fine. And they've been telling us that they don't want that, right? The Super Bowl and these big money games, they don't want weather being a factor in their games. I mean, the leagues have made that abundantly clear. So how do you –
Right, but the NFL, that doesn't stop them. Arrowhead Stadium's been hosting a lot of cold playoff games the last few years.
Yeah.
So It's not like that doesn't happen.
Right, but they want their biggest game. And maybe so, but I guess it depends. But they told us that, Bill Hancock told us that they wouldn't come here because of the roof, because of the weather.
I know.
We're too far north.
This is why I'm bringing up this whole thing, because I'm concerned about the viability of the Music City Bowl continuing in this new atmosphere. If they go down this road of having host sites for the first round of playoff games, I think if it stays, if I don't know about stays, because the first proposal was home sites, but if it's not, then I think the bowl system will essentially stay the same way. And even if Nashville doesn't get a playoff game, which I think they would fight very hard to get one in some sort of rotation, but at least you would have the regular matchups for bowl games. But you would just have the added situation that keeps coming up that more and more of the top players are sitting out the bowl games. That's making a bigger challenge. And two, with more playoff games and more focus on the playoffs themselves, then there probably is even less spotlight on the other bowl games in terms of interest level.
I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other, because I've said for years I was totally fine and it would make sense. Because remember, there was that, it's really laughable when you think about all the things, all the excuses that have been made over the years, which we know, just they're completely irrelevant and not true. The other one was, how can you possibly do that? How can you ask fan bases to travel that much? I mean, give me a break. They're going to travel. Those fan bases don't care. They will travel. They're crazy. They build their whole schedule, their vacations. They spend their budget is around traveling to see their football team. I mean, they just do. Or any of their teams, whether it's College World Series or whether it's, Final Four. It doesn't matter. Those hardcore fans, they're going to do it no matter what. They've proven in the NCAA tournament they're willing to take it every step of the way. They're willing to follow them all the way through the tournament at different locations. They'll do the same thing for football. Remember when we said, oh, you can't? So I said, well, then fine. Then make the first round home games for the higher seed. And so I've thrown that out there many, many times over the years, so I'm in favor. I'm okay with the first round being rewarding the higher seed and giving them a home game. Well, but I also am okay with supporting the bowls, right? The other bowls, and letting them host a first-round playoff game. So I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other, because I would obviously be 100% all in favor of a first-round game here in our city around the Music City Bowl. But I also have been one saying I would understand a first-round home game for a higher seed.
Right. I think I'm with you. As a fan, I don't have a strong opinion either way. I would be concerned about – I like games that have a full stadium, and I think if you had home sites, we know it would be a tremendous full stadium. I don't care if the weather's bad, right? If it's at Michigan or something, and it's a playoff game, it's going to be packed. It's going to be awesome. I don't know for sure if it's going to be totally packed at a neutral site, depending on who the teams are and where they have to travel. They'd probably have a good crowd, but could they fill a stadium every time? I don't know. But just strictly from the only reason I'm bringing all this up is because I am concerned that if they do go the home site route in this 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11, and so on in the 4 games, then that is going to affect the Music City Bowl, and it's going to make a bigger challenge for it. So that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to bring up a challenge no matter what. I mean, look, it's not just the Music City Bowl. If they go to this 12-team
it's every
format,
bowl.
It's going to affect everybody.
It's every bowl that's not in a playoff game. That doesn't
because you no longer are going to get those big-time schools,
No.
right, that sell tons of tickets to your bowl.
Even if you had number 13 versus number 14, that bowl is going to struggle to get a lot of spotlight because it's the NIT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're probably not going to get 13 versus 14. It's going to be more like 13 versus 25, right?
Let me add this extra element into the conversation. I think, and tell me if you agree or disagree, if they did go neutral sites the entire way, the entire playoffs, that this could ultimately affect conference championship games. Because at some point, if you've had, 6 or in this case 7 home games the regular season that you bought, and you're planning on a deep run with your team, and you think that there's a real shot that the first round game could be 500 miles away. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to. It's not going to be Alabama playing in Atlanta, or LSU playing in New Orleans. That it could affect the conference championship. Like at some point, they're like, because if they're expanding, it may be like the conference champion. Like if my team doesn't win the SEC championship, they're still going to the playoffs. So it's irrelevant. So we're not going to Atlanta.
Yeah.
We're just going to bag out Atlanta. It's a meaningless game. We're going to the playoffs no matter what. We're going to save our money and our time for the playoffs. Now, I think it could affect the conference championship games.
I think you're right. On some given years, there will be some SEC. Let's just take the SEC. I would say at least half the time that the East winner and the West winner, win or lose in the championship game, they're both going to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that will take a lot of luster. And there have been some great championship games. Let's just take Alabama, Georgia a couple years ago, the year Jalen Hurts came off the bench. I mean, it was a great game. And you knew that the loser of that game is probably out, right? There has been an odd year where both has there been a year where both participants made the playoffs that played in the championship game?
Well,
most times when two teams make it to the Final Four, it's a team that wins the championship and a team that didn't make it to the championship from the same division.
Yeah.
Right? But we've seen some great games where the loser's out. Like Georgia was out, losing that game. And that would probably be something that goes by the wayside there. So that's a good point.
Like if Clemson loses the ACC championship game and their fan base knows, it's just going to affect our seed. We're still in. It's just
maybe we don't get a bye.
Seed. Right. Maybe they choose not to go to the ACC.
Yeah. They save their money. They might have 3 playoffs.
Save up. We'll watch it on TV. We'll gear up for the playoffs.
Yeah, we might make 3 trips. So why go to the ACC championship game? I know we're going to be in the playoffs. I'll invest there. That's a good point.
So ultimately, what I'm saying is this real trickle-down effect could actually affect conference championships. It really could, because here's another thing to factor in. Okay, let's say this element is in play, which does happen a lot. Whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Clemson, pick your school. Where, give me a break. It means nothing in the conference championship game. They're in the playoffs. It just would affect their seed. Well, what's to stop those coaches? If a kid's got a nagging injury, boy, he sure could use a little bit more rest. Is it this where you just start sitting players? Like, why would I waste them on a meaningless conference championship game other than, it would be great to say we won the conference championship. Yeah, it'll be another banner or trophy or what have you. That would look good in the trophy case. But ultimately, that's not what we're here for. We're here to win the national championship. So you know what? My star running back that's got this nagging groin injury or hamstring or whatever, a bum shoulder, boy, he could use a little bit more time off. Like, he's getting close. But if we play him, it's just going to hamper him the entire playoffs. And then you start seeing all these star players sitting in the conference championship game. So I think it could affect them 2 ways. You could have fan bases going, I'll just wait. I'm going to gear up for the playoffs. I'll watch it on TV, the conference championship game. And, by the way, why would I go there? I know like 4 star players on our team isn't even going to play. They're going to sit.
Yes. Well, imagine this too, because I don't think it's been completely determined. whether the championship game is an automatic bid, right? Can you imagine a scenario where just a given year, it's a really balanced SEC West? Just, let's just say there's 4 teams that have 3 losses, there's a tiebreaker, and Mississippi State is in the SEC championship game. Well, if it's an automatic bid into the playoffs, then there's everything on the line, and the championship game is very relevant. If it's not even a certainty that if they win the championship game against, let's just say, Georgia, who's undefeated, and they're going to be in whether they win or lose, then that's another thing that takes away the luster of the championship game, right? So I'm in favor of automatic bids for the Power 5 leagues. I think the automatic bid should go to the league champion.
Forces them to play?
I think that would force them to play, number one. And number two, I just think if you win your league, you should be in a 12-team playoff, even if you didn't have a great regular season.
Yeah,
I'd be in favor of that. I don't, but I'm not alone. I'm not alone, but I'm not unanimous in that. I think there are a lot of people that think that you should hold back and not give one of those precious 12 bids to somebody who maybe won their league but wasn't a deserving team. That could happen every now and then.
Yep.
It's happened in the other leagues. I don't think it's ever happened in the SEC. Some teams have reached the final but not played really well in that championship game. If they pull off a big upset, I think they should be in the dance.
Yep. Good stuff. We'll come back. We'll start the final hour. We'll check in with Adam Vinkin. We'll switch gears, talk a little Preds. Off-season, we'll do that next with him as you listen to the DDC right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Final hour, Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope everybody's having a great day to this point. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic here with you. Chase is off today. Elijah Campbell is manning the board at our Wholesale Link Game Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. You heard him filling in for Joe Rexroad this morning with Robbie Stanley. He is Adam Vingan. He covers the Predators for The Athletic, and he is now on the line with us. Adam, how was your fourth?
It was good. It was relaxing, except for having to tranquilize my dog so he didn't freak out about all the fireworks. But it was a nice weekend. Got some stuff done around the house. Enjoyed a cookout with friends. No complaints.
It is interesting. Does anybody have a dog out there that just truly does not care about fireworks? I feel like everybody's dogs are affected by fireworks. Like, does anybody have a dog that's like, fireworks, what's the big deal? They just sit there and they just hang out and doesn't bother them because there's really, I feel like everybody's dog feels the same. Everybody's dog reacts the same way, right? Or dogs.
Yeah, I kind of react that way too. Sometimes fireworks get me all jumpy. But a couple of weeks ago when I was on vacation, my wife and I went to visit her parents, and we brought the dog, and it's about a 9.5-hour car ride to visit her parents, and we got trazodone, which is basically dog Xanax, to tranquilize Pretzel. So we already had some in the house. So we gave it to him in the late afternoon, and by dinner time, he could barely keep his eyes open. So that's the key, is to drug the dog.
Very nice. Words of wisdom from Adam. So we have had a chance to get your reaction to the Victor Arvidsson trade. He, of course, sent to the L.A. Kings. What do you make of what David Poile did?
I liked it. I thought it was a smart piece of business by the Predators to trade Victor Arvidsson. I think trading Victor Arvidsson was something that I suggested the Predators do since the end of the season. And when you consider everything that David told the two of you and Chase last week, he laid it out very well, that the expansion draft played a huge factor in the trade. It certainly sounded like David Poile was considering not protecting Victor Arvidsson, so better to get assets for a player of Arvidsson's caliber than to just let him leave for nothing. Also, we all came to realize watching Victor Arvidsson over the past couple of years that he was not the same player that scored close to 100 goals over a 3-season span between 2016 2016-17 through 2018-19. He had 25 goals over the past two seasons. He struggled with injury. When he was in the lineup, he was not the same player. His status as a go-to guy had diminished. I just think when you boil it all down to its essence, it made perfect sense to trade Victor Arvidsson. I have a hard time coming up with any reason that this was a bad idea. Certainly, Victor Arvidsson is going to be given more of an opportunity in Los Angeles. It's a rebuilding team. He'll be a top six player. He'll be on the top power play, all of those things. So if Victor Arvidsson bounces back early on in the season next year, and Predators fans might think, well, why did the Predators trade Victor Arvidsson? Look at all these goals he's scoring. I would not be shocked to see that. But the Predators within the organization were skeptical that Arvidsson would recapture his form at his age and with his recent injury history. So all in all, I think it was a good move.
They're not going to address the goalies till after the expansion draft. But do you think that they privately know Pekka's decision? Do you think that they privately know what he's going to do?
If they don't know exactly what he's going to do, I'm sure they have a feeling about it. Last time I checked into it, I was told there was no update on those conversations, and I believe David told you that he was planning on meeting with Pekka again this week. So perhaps more clarity will be given to the Predators in the coming days. But certainly, I'm sure they have an idea one way or another if they do not know for sure about Pecorine. But I don't think they're going to rush this. I think because of how much Pekka means to the organization, they're going to give him as much time as he needs to come to a decision. Of course, I think they would like to know sooner rather than later. Definitely by the end of the month when free agency starts, just in case they need to go out and sign a backup. So, I think there will be clarity on this particular issue in the coming weeks. But to answer your question, if they don't have, if they don't know for sure, I'm sure they have an inkling.
What do you think could possibly change on his end? I mean, really, I don't see where anything is going to change. I think he does. I just think when you're in that position, if you've ever been in that position about making a big decision, you truly know. Maybe you haven't expressed it openly to people, but the people very, very close to you know the way you feel. What could possibly change from this week to next week to the end of the month where it's going to hinge him deciding one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and certainly I'm sure Pekka, even if he hasn't come out and said it yet, which he hasn't, he has to be leaning one way or another. But, the one thing that might, keep him from, making the decision, in a swift manner is, this is his life. He's been a hockey player, his entire life. The Predators organization has meant a ton to him. Even though he's closing in on 40, he has a baby boy. Perhaps he wants to make sure without a shadow of a doubt that he doesn't want to play anymore. Not to say that he couldn't come back. I mean, Mike Fisher did that a few years ago. But I think I'm sure he just wants to make sure that there's no part of him that wants to go through the grind again, especially when this has been his life. So that might be the only thing I think, might be, keeping him up at night, so to speak, other than a crying baby, is is this something that, is he ready to give this life up? Is he ready to move on to the next chapter of his life? That's not a hard thing. That's not an easy thing to do. Even if he's been in this game for a long time and feels like he's accomplished a lot, a lot of players, their identity is tied up in being a hockey player. And perhaps, or just an athlete in general. So, I think that's something that he might be, making sure he makes the right decision about.
Yeah. Speaking with Adam Vingan from The Athletic, covers the Predators for them. There was, the reaction from the players going back to the Victor Arvidsson trade. You had Philip Forsberg with the thumbs down. Ryan Johansson expressed his feelings. I know Matt Duchene, if you look at Instagram, the Duchene family and the Arvidsson family are close. They vacation together. I know Kelly Yarncroke has been a part of that as well. We know his relationship with the Swedes. What do you think ultimately is going to be? Is there going to be ultimately? Is there going to be any fallout from Victor Arvidsson being traded in the room? Do you think or does everybody initially say it stinks? I'm losing a friend. And everybody moves on and you say it's just business? Or do you think truly it could affect, a guy like Ekholm or Forsberg moving forward who, are very close to him? How do you think that'll play out, in your opinion?
I saw a lot of that over the weekend from fans and readers on The Athletic wondering if those comments and sentiments posted by Philip Forsberg and Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene were the signs of an upcoming mutiny. Perhaps that's an extreme description, but this idea that that the feeling inside the dressing room about the trade was going to be negative and that it could have a lasting impact. I think you kind of hit on it, Darren, when you said, look, these players grew up together. Victor Arvidsson, of course, is Swedish, just like Calle Yarncroke and Philip Forsberg and Matthias Ekholm. Arvidsson, it was a close friend to a lot of players in that dressing room. He was beloved by his teammates. Of course, when something like this happens, they're going to be upset, but they also understand that it's a business. And then one thing I think is important to say, and I think people understand this as well, is those players, not just the ones that we just listed off, but the entire team to an extent, they bear some responsibility in this trade. Because how many times did they expect to get chance after chance after chance to win a Stanley Cup and not do so before they were broken up? If anything, a lot of people around here think that David Poile gave them too many chances. And to me, I feel like this is almost, I don't know if this is also perhaps an extreme description, but I feel like it's a bit of a warning shot to the rest of the core. I feel like for the first time, in a few years, a core member of this team has been traded. The last couple of years, we've seen some players, secondary players, have either been traded or unsigned, whether it was someone like Nick Bonino or Austin Watson or Craig Smith or, Colin Blackwell or Yannick Weber, players that play important roles but aren't the core of the team. I feel like this is a sign to the likes of Philip Forsberg and Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, Matthias Ekholm, Ryan Ellis, etc., that what's been going on is no longer acceptable. And, the players have every right to be upset that Victor Arvidsson was traded. They were incredibly close to him. But they have to understand that when they look in the mirror, they played a part in this. I mean, Victor Arvidsson did too. He was not the same player when he was healthy. He was not producing at the same rate he was at the peak of his career a few years ago. Some of that is on him, and some of that is on the rest of the team, for not pulling their weight. So, not to say this is all on the team necessarily, but I think when these players react to this trade, I think they also need to be realistic that this was bound to happen after so many missed opportunities.
Adam, it's tough to try to figure out what's going to happen over a 6 or 7 or 8 year span. It's just hard. So much can change in any setting. The Calle Yarncroke deal, 6 years, $12 million, 2 per. It's worked out tremendously for the Predators. It has been an unbelievable contract that David Poile signed, got Calle Yarncroke and his agent to sign. The Pekka Rinne deal, 7 for 7, 7 years, $49 million, worked out perfectly. And those are great examples where it did work out. But more times than not, you get into it and more people, there's just so much that can happen where you're looking around and what's, the Ryan Johansson, all the stuff that's been said over time. If he didn't have that contract, none of that would be said, right? If Matt Duchene hadn't signed the contract they did, a lot of this wouldn't be said. Kyle Turris, same thing. How much do you think that will affect how David Poile operates moving forward? Because it's so hard to make those long-term contracts work. And I know he just gave one to Roman Josi, but you've got guys like Ekholm and, more importantly, a younger guy like Philip Forsberg. How do you think that will affect his decision on how he goes about trying to get them to stay here and what type of deal he would offer them?
Yeah, I think David certainly needs to be cognizant of that. I think some of the recent 8-year contracts that have been signed in the NHL, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with the Edmonton Oilers and Joel Eriksson-Ek of the Minnesota Wild, I believe Ryan Nugent-Hopkins signed an 8-year contract with a $5.125 million cap hit, which was actually a pay cut from his $6 million cap hit on his previous contract, but he exchanged money for term. That'll be an interesting dynamic moving forward in this flat cap world. When you think of Philip Forsberg and Matthias Ekholm specifically, I think we would agree that Matthias Ekholm, no doubt has exceeded the value of his contract and did so a long time ago. So Matthias Ekholm is due for a big raise. Philip Forsberg is really interesting to me in terms of what that contract might look like, because he deserves a raise of some kind. But how much is Philip Forsberg really worth? That's the question I'm very fascinated to find out. I remember, during the period of the season when things were going south and there were rumors about Philip Forsberg being on the trade block, I tried to look into what I thought Philip Forsberg's next contract would look like, and I thought it would be reasonable for him to receive upwards of $9 million a year. Thinking back on that, I would not do that. Robbie and I talked about this morning. I think Philip Forsberg ideally is a $7 to $7.5 million player per year. But would Philip Forsberg accept that to go from $6 million to $7 million or $6 million to $7.5 million? I don't know. And like Austin Matthews, who's on a different level than Philip Forsberg, but he sort of did something a bit different when he signed his current contract. I think his contract is 5 years, and it has a big cap hit, but it's 5 years, and it sets him up to get another big contract. I wonder if the Predators would be willing to do something like that with Philip Forsberg. I just think that the Predators have had mixed success with those long-term deals. I think Arvidsson, despite only being here for 4 of the 7 years, and declining near the end, I think, the value of his contract was fair. I think we would all agree that the Ryan Johansson contract has aged poorly, but when he signed it, I don't think anybody had any issue with it. The Matt Duchene contract was probably a mistake. The Kyle Turris trading contract was definitely a mistake. I think the Ryan Ellis contract, the jury is still out, but I think for the most part, he provided solid value. I just think that the Predators need to tread lightly when it comes to these negotiations, just because you do not want to lock yourself into more problematic long-term deals.
Talking to Adam Vingan from The Athletic, and talking all things Predators right now. So, Adam, I'll just propose this to you as if you're Ron Francis of the Kraken. And this is something that I think it was Chase last week that offered as a little bit of a twist, is if you could pick up the tab on part of this contract. But let's just say you were really bound and determined to move the Matt Duchene contract. But now that Victor Arvidsson is not, we know he's not in the equation at all for the expansion draft. And the choices are this. I'm proposing this to you as the Predators. It's Matt Duchene, a first-round pick, and let's just say $2 million off the top of his salary. Would you take that, or would you just take whoever you think is the best of the unprotected list? Let's say it's Kalle Järnkrok, or let's say it's Yakov Trenin, a player like that. Those are your two choices. Which is better for the Kraken?
That's a good question. Well, in the Matt Duchene proposal, you do get Matt Duchene at a reduced rate. If you're retaining $2 million in salary, Matt Duchene at $6 million, I think is fine. Like, I think Matt Duchene is pretty much a $6 million player thereabouts, just in terms of the value he offers. So if you were able to get Matt Duchene for $6 million and a first round pick, and have him under contract for several years, I think I might be more willing to do that than taking a younger player. Kalle Järnkrok has 1 year left on his deal. If the Kraken struggle, he could be flipped at the trade deadline. Trenin is certainly a player that a team can build its bottom six around, or at least have as a key player in their bottom six. But if the Predators are willing to retain salary and throw in an asset of value, such as a first round pick, I would be more willing to consider that, just because I think Matt Duchene perhaps can provide more bang for the buck at a lower rate.
So I'm in the ballpark. Because there are some that have proposed to me what it would take for somebody to take Duchene. I just think they're way off base. So they're throwing in, a developed prospect and a first round pick, and I've seen Ryan Ellis thrown in this. I was like, come on. I know that it is not palatable for the Kraken to want to take on a big salary in their very first year, one that has a lot of term, right? That's the biggest thing. It's one thing to have an $8 million salary the first year, but you're still going to have it because Matt Duchene's contract goes for a long, long time, 5 more years, right? As their roster evolves, that's going to be a factor. But I don't know that it's going to be as much as some people might think. But that's why I'm throwing it at you, because you have to try to look at it from the Kraken's perspective as best you can and guess.
One thing that I would be interested in looking at, and maybe I'll do it after we get off the phone, is what the longest contract that was selected by the Vegas Golden Knights. I'd be curious to see. I can't recall off the top of my head if they picked a player with significant term on a contract. And of course, they did pick some players who were injured and on long-term injured reserve, who had, but that was dead money.
Who they knew were never going to play for them.
Right. Like in terms of players who actually were on the team, I'd be curious to see what the longest contract they took. I mean, I would guess that most of the contracts they took were either 1 year left or maybe 2 years left. I'm not sure if there was a player that had 5 years left on his contract. Maybe Marc-Andre Fleury. Did he recently correct me if I'm wrong. Has he re-signed?
He signed a second deal with them. Yeah, he has signed a second deal with them. I can't remember exactly when it was.
Yeah, I can't remember. I couldn't remember if he had signed a second deal with them. But you're right. If Vegas is a blueprint for Seattle, then it would seem unlikely that they would take a player with significant term. It seems more likely, unless they were so blown away by whatever the Predators were offering them to take Matt Duchene, that they would do it. Otherwise, I think they would be willing to take someone like Yarncroke, have him for a year, maybe flip him, right after the expansion draft, or flip him at the deadline, or what have you. I think that seems like a more logical choice.
I feel like the Florida situation, Adam, is probably, if we looked into it or you looked into it, it feels like what we're talking about because, they basically said, hey, heck, we'll throw in, Riley Smith if you take him. It was Marcia show, right? So maybe he was the one that had the bigger, longer contract that Florida was begging Vegas to take. I don't know that, but it feels like that dynamic was in play for them to say, and we'll throw in this player if you'll do it.
So I'm looking at Cap Friendly. So Riley Smith signed a 5-year contract with the Panthers before the 2016-17 season.
Okay, so that's the contract they wanted to shed.
Oh, so it was Riley Smith. That was the one they were trying to shed. Okay.
Yes. So he is entering the final year of his contract, which was signed with the Panthers. So I guess he would be an example of somebody.
That's a caution. And honestly, and Adam, as you say that's a cautionary tale about what can happen, because at the time Riley Smith was dead weight for the Panthers. They were like, oh man, we don't have a lot of money lying around here. This contract is killing us. What a huge mistake. These are basically the same things that people are saying about Matt Duchene right now, right? And that doesn't mean that Matt Duchene wouldn't completely bounce back and be the player they thought they were signing after 2 off years, right? It absolutely could happen, even though there are people right now that are convinced it could never happen, and you've got to go to the great ends of the earth to get rid of this contract. And I just think you got to, put the caution flag up there and think about these things. The Riley Smith tale is a good one.
Yeah, but how did Florida get him to take him?
They had to trade him a roster player.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They had to really Right. They had to really sweeten the pot.
Right. And Marchessault at the time had not really – I'd have to go back and look, but I don't remember him flourishing in Florida to think that – I remember him coming up as a young member of the Lightning organization who was sort of blocked by all the young talent that they had. They always thought he was pretty good. I don't remember exactly what he did for the Panthers or what he didn't do, but obviously they're willing to throw him in there.
30 goals. He had 30 goals and 51 points in 75 games for the Panthers in his final season with them.
Okay, so he had a great year for the Panthers then.
Yes, he did. He was a 30-goal scorer.
What in the world? That is crazy. All right, Adam, couple more quick.
Really not like Riley Smith.
Yes. Quick ones here. Couple other spare, role players that are in the, it's sort of floating out there right now as to whether they'll be back for the Predators or not. Just give me your gut feeling. Will they be back? Let's start with Eric Holla, who's a free agent. Do you think they want him back at the right price?
At the right price, I think so. But when you look at some of the younger players coming up, I think Eric Holla might be expendable. Eric Holla got off to a slow start, was very valuable down the stretch, scored some big goals. You think of the goal he scored against Dallas in the regular season game near the end of the season that more or less put the Predators in the position to make the playoffs. But I think of someone like Rem Pitlick, for example. I think Rem Pitlick could be this team's third-line center next year. And I think it would be important for the Predators not to block too many open spots for younger players by re-signing some of the veterans. So I could see Eric Holla being a casualty of a further youth movement.
Okay, yeah, because he's a free agent, so they've got there's that factor. Now, how about a couple of guys that are under contract that, for whatever reason, maybe it didn't work out for? Let's just take, for example, Mark Borowiecki. He's got 1 year left. Do you think it's a shoo-in that he comes back, or do you think they would try to move him?
I mean, I'm sure they would try. I'm not sure how many takers they would have. He didn't play after early March because of a concussion. His season before he was injured wasn't that great. Fortunately for the Predators, his cap hit isn't significant. So he could be he could be your extra defenseman next season and not be a hindrance on the cap. So okay. I think he'll be back mostly because I'm not sure anyone would take him.
Rocco Grimaldi.
See, that's an interesting one to me. I mean, I would consider trading him. I'm not sure you would get a ton for him, but I'm just not sure where he fits into the lineup. We've talked about this before. He seems to have fallen out of the rotation for John Himes, and Rocco Grimaldi has a lot of fans, but his defensive numbers last year were not very good. Of course, he scored 4 goals in the game, which is what everybody brings up. But other than that, his season was not much to remember. Excuse me. So, I wonder if he'll be back. But to me, he seems like a legitimate trade candidate.
All right, Adam, great stuff. We've tackled it. We've hit it backwards and forwards. I just wish it was tomorrow that everything would start here. We've still got a couple more weeks before we get the verdict.
On July 17th, that's what, a week and a half? We're good?
Okay, we're inside of 2 weeks. All right, I guess I can make it. I can make it. Okay.
You can do this. You can do it.
We've been doing it for a long time. We've been doing it for a couple years now. So
and it's July 6th. It's July 6th, and it's still hockey season. We have another hockey game, at least, to wrap our arms around tomorrow. So we'll see if the mayor gets her wish that they close it out on home soil. I think it would be awesome if the Canadians won again and Tampa had to go back up to Montreal for Game 6. That would be precious. Just to have her the karma of doing that.
It would be the biggest scandal involving audio from a politician since Watergate.
Maybe a little hyperbole, but I see your point. Adam, we'll talk to you again soon.
I've been all about hyperbole today. All right.
Adam Vingan, The Athletic, does a great job covering the Predators. When we come back, we'll delve into a few more of these things. It was a big win for Montreal last night. Shea Weber feeling pretty good after he got the double minor high stick. I was worried that his season was going to end in the penalty box, but Montreal survived and then won in OT. Also, let me tell you about Loan Pronto. In case you missed it, mortgage rates have been down, low points, and that means it's a great opportunity to lock in your forever loan with my friends at Loan Pronto. Loan Pronto wants you to call now and take advantage of their special zero-cost refi program. You hear me talking about it all the time. You can snag that super low rate. No junk fees, no closing costs. They don't just roll the closing costs into your loan. They cover them for you. That's a rare thing. Can't find anybody else that does this. If you thought you missed out on the best rates ever, you have another chance. Even if you refinanced here recently, you can do it again. And you're going to save that money on your monthly payment You're going to skip your next couple of house payments, and it's an all-digital process that makes it super fast and easy. Most loans from Loan Pronto get closed in 14 days, and most don't even require an appraisal. So call Loan Pronto now and get this process going. 615-499-5780. 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. If your current mortgage rate starts with a 3, you need to act now. 615-499-5780, Equal Housing Lender.
NMLS 1661781. Subject to lender approval. Not all loans eligible for zero costs.
Don't forget, 94.9 is the home for Nashville Sounds baseball. Tonight, Sounds take on Gwinnett. That's the AAA affiliate of the Braves. Pre-game show begins at 5:50. First pitch at 6:05. Nashville Sounds baseball on 94.9, presented by 312 Pizza Company. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Good conversation there with Adam Vinkin. Yeah, Willie, I mean, come on. It's July 17th, I think, is when David Poyle needs to submit his list. And so we're 11 days out. A week and a half, man. It'll be here before you know it. It won't be that
I'll
long.
survive. I'll make it.
You will.
I'll get
good
there.
about that. So that is interesting. It feels like that is the comparison, right? That it was the Riley Smith contract that Florida was looking to unload, and Vegas
Yeah,
was,
please, what are we going to do about
Vegas
this? We've
was
got to
like,
get rid of him.
Yeah, we're going to pass on that. And they said, what about Jonathan Marchessault? He just had 30 goals this season. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I'm listening. Oh, okay, I think we're listening and we're doing. Okay, we will do that. And you know what? That has worked out pretty well for Vegas. That has been quite the deal that they struck with Florida. They took two players that have worked out pretty well for them, right?
Pretty well, I would say.
Still with them.
Knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, 4 years of a lot of success with those two guys.
I just don't think you could have predicted. I didn't realize Marchessault had that much success with Florida. Now, it's fuzzy. My memory is going, but that's a lot. Like I just don't think you would get to that ballpark. But Adam makes a really interesting point. Like the term, it's the length of the contract that is a big deal for Seattle long term. Like I think you could handle a big contract for a couple of years, but that long of a deal, that's where boy, talk to me, man. I don't know. But on the other hand, when I put it side by side, we did this exercise last week. You know, it's better for the Kraken to have Duchesne and X first, maybe a little financial relief on it, or just to take Calle Yarncroke or Yakov Trenin or whoever you think is going to be among the top unprotected players. What's better for them? That's why I think Vegas hit it big with so many deals, is because, you know, they worked it, and they got a lot of good stuff. And boy, not only did some of it hit, it seemed like all of it hit. Alex Tuck and all that, you can go down team by team that they did these deals with. They all work really, really well.
That's why I understand the Vegas envy. I get it. All the other fan bases. I totally get it. 30 fan bases that have been ticked off for 4 seasons because they got to endure success right out of the gates. I understand that. But you also have to give Vegas credit. Like you just said, they worked it. Like they have to get credit. They just didn't get – it wasn't a fantasy draft where they just said you can pick anybody you want off any roster and build your fantasy team. That's not what it was. They actually worked it. They made all this come together and work. And they hired a coach right out of the gates that worked, and then they've since then hired another coach that has worked. They've had success. So, you know, I just at some point you do have to give them some credit. It may pain a lot of fan bases and fans to do, but you do have to credit them for putting together a formula or having a formula, and they put together a roster that has worked for the last 4 seasons, and they have endured a lot of success. They have had no pain yet in Vegas, other than they haven't won it every year, or they haven't won it all yet, right?
Yeah, they don't know pain. Let's be honest.
No, they
have had playoff pain for you know, no question. Like they've lost in the playoffs, which hurts, but they have not had any of the experience of working your way up to being a playoff team, which
no suffering
definitely bothers people like me. But let me throw you. Speaking of, here's another guy that ended up on that first Vegas team is Eric Halla. I brought him up. That's another guy they hit it big with, right? Eric Halla was a huge success on that first Vegas team. He's played for a couple of teams since then. Adam brought up a comparison, him / Rem Pitlick, you know, for sort of the same role. I can see that possibly, but how do you feel about that? In a perfect world, I'd kind of like to have Eric Halla back for a similar price. Like, I'm not willing to give him a big raise or a big multi-year deal, but for about the same price, I think I would take him back on this team. Would you?
So what are you asking? Just him just coming back?
Yeah, just him coming back. He's a free agent, right? You're going to have to sign him,
It's a one-year deal.
This will be a
initially.
post expansion situation, right? Because you're not going to save him. But he threw out, leaving avenues for young players to get in. You do have to think about that. And he threw out Rem Pitlick. I don't know if Rem Pitlick is ready to jump in there and claim a job right away. He's definitely in the mix. He could make a jump and earn that. But I kind of like to have players like Eric Halla around as either a security blanket or a competition, experience. There's Tomasino as well. But I look at my grand scheme, I kind of like to have Halla back in there. That's my thought.
Well,
but I'm not willing to pay big.
My question to you is, if Rem Pitlick's not ready, when is he going to be ready? He's 24 years old. At some point, either
it's a good
he's
question.
going to be an NHLer or he's not.
But
how much longer are you going to wait on Rem Pitlick?
It's a good question. And Alex Carrier, for a couple years there, he was kind of floating around, organizational person. Is he going to make it? I don't know. And then, boom, we're talking about him being protected in the expansion draft, and rightfully so. So could Pitlick make that jump next year? Absolutely. That's possible. But he's definitely got another level to his game that I think he's got to get to. He's got to be a little bit more of a force offensively. He's got to get a little stronger. Be a guy that can handle the battles defensively, right? The physicality along the boards, in the trenches. That's where Halla, you got to give him credit, right? He's a wily vet. He gets under your skin. He is a hardened warrior, right? Along those lines. You know what you're getting from him. So there might be room for both, right? They both were on the roster last year. But I feel like Rem Pitlick still got to show me that he can do it, right? I can't just let guys go and just open up a spot and say that's for Rem Pitlick. He's still got to wedge his way in there some, don't you think? But that's the key question is, if you do bring Halla back, you're forcing that to happen, right? Or you're blocking a spot for somebody else you might have in mind. Maybe it's another free agent that's out there. I just wonder if they like Halla enough in the role that he was in to bring him back in that role.
Well, clearly he got under the skin of Carolina's fan base.
Well, that's
players.
for sure.
My
But there was a little
goodness.
history there, apparently, that we didn't know that much about.
That was brought to light in that playoff series. I don't know. I guess, one, you need to see who you're going to lose. What body is going away. Because at some point, and we keep talking about this, because, one, David Poyle keeps telling us, it seems very clear. It doesn't mean it guarantees it, but it's very clear they want Philip Tomasino to make this roster. They do. Eeli Tolvanen needs to be an everyday player, okay? Not some of the time, not most of the time. He needs to be an everyday player. At some point, trying to work all these bodies in means bodies have to go away for this to happen. And, oh, by the way, if Eeli Tolvanen's going to be an everyday player, don't you kind of envision him as top six without a doubt, right? He's got to be top six. I know he's played both. He's played both. He's been top six.
At least when he's playing well, he should be in the top six, especially with Arvidsson not in the mix now. There's an opening. There's an opening in that top six. So, boy, you would love for him to just jump in there and grab it. But we know last year there were times that he was not playing well enough to be in the top six, and he was moved down in the lineup. But he's going to be in the lineup, I think, Tolvanen. And you hope that another year of getting stronger, another year of now being in the league, that's going to help him become a really good player. You brought up something else, Darren. If they don't move a big contract, which, of course, that would also leave a big hole in the top six, but that you could do all kinds of stuff with that. But let's say you still have Duchesne and Johansson, but you lose somebody like Järnkrok. Or maybe it's Colton Sissons, but I think more likely to be somebody like Järnkrok. Doesn't that also have a little more need for you to bring back an Eric Halla?
Yeah,
maybe
maybe
it's more hinging on that.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of these decisions I think that we're talking about are going to have to wait. They're on pause. They're on hold right now until after they find out who they're losing. because that is going to dictate. That is part of the jigsaw puzzle. Them trying to move things around and make this all work, they have to figure out who's going to go bye-bye first.
Yeah. Grimaldi's in that. That's why I was asking about Grimaldi.
Absolutely.
Hall,
for sure.
Nick Cousins is under contract another year. I think they like what he brings to the table in his role, but he's only got 1 year left. There's Matt Benning. There's Borowiecki on D, a couple of veterans like that. You know, when you only have 1 year left and it's a low number, there's some options, right? You can keep them, but you know, I mean, I don't think they're in the mode of wanting to buy people out, but you have some I guess some flexibility there on some options of what you want to do.
Yeah. All right, we'll come back and put a bow on Tuesday's edition of Darren, Daunic, and Chase. We'll do that on the other side, but right now I'm going to talk to you about Conor McGregor and Poirier. Yeah, they're going to do their rubber match, you know. McGregor versus Poirier 3. It's all set for this weekend. UFC 264 and DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, has a knockout offer for this weekend's fight. Listen to this. They're going to offer up 264 to 1 odds on a knockout in the first round during Saturday's main event. Yes, if the rubber match ends in a first-round knockout, you walk away with cash. All you have to do is pick one of the main event fighters that you think will win in a first-round knockout, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 264 to 1 odds on that fighter. That's right. Bet $1 of your money on either McGregor or Poirier to win in a first-round knockout, and you win $264 if it happens. There's no better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than to put your money where your mouth is. That's with DraftKings Sportsbook. Don't worry if MMA is not for you. They've got great odds and promotions on basketball, hockey, and so much more. Plus, it's safe, secure, and reliable for you to deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. All you have to do is download that top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code 1025GAME, and when you sign up, turn $1 into $264 when you bet on the main event fighter, either McGregor or Poirier, to win by a first-round knockout. Place your bet. Watch the fist fly this weekend. Use that code again, 1025GAME, and have your opportunity to turn $1 into $264. You must be 21 years of age or older, Tennessee only. New customers only. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and needs help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Billy has left the building in Hoover. He's going to go see Mahoney's game. He'll be back with us tomorrow. I was looking, Elijah, during the break. It looks like former first-round pick N'Keal Harry, the wide receiver for the Patriots, his agent has requested a trade from the Patriots. He's asked the Patriots, please trade my client. He has not done much with the Patriots. I don't know. And by the way, his cap hit is pretty small, obviously. He's still on that rookie contract. I think if a new team gets him this year, he would count $1.4 million against the cap. Next year, $1.8. And then, of course, the 2023 is the team option. So very cheap. The dead cap for the Patriots, their savings would be $1.34 this year. Okay, so $1.34 the next 2 years. So that would be the savings they would get on the cap. He has all of 45 catches in 2 seasons. That's his pro career to this point.
That's not a lot. He has not played many games either. Be willing to bet that that number is not very high as well. He has been injury-plagued, to say the least. That'd be a nice way of putting it, at least.
Yeah, he had 12 catches his rookie season, 33 catches last year for 309 yards. So I would say to this point, he has been an absolute bust. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know if there's any value. I don't even know. I guess 2 years in the league, a first-round pick, there's always going to be another team lining up. That'll sign up for that and say, maybe this is when the light bulb goes on, right? It'll happen on our watch. So I'm sure there'll be some takers. I guess the question I have is, should the Titans kick that tire?
I mean, it's worth the thought. I mean, if you're an NFL GM too, you also got to think maybe his lack of production is solely injuries, and then maybe a little bit of it Cam Newton being really bad last year. I mean, I know a lot of the discussion of Cam being bad was the lack of weapons around it, so it's got to be one or the other. Maybe he is that talented, and he just didn't have the quarterback to make that happen, which, of course, in Tennessee would be a totally different story. I'd trust Ryan Tannehill to get him a little more involved better than Cam Newton, or maybe the injuries have hampered him enough to where his first-round talent isn't there anymore. At least it's worth the consideration because he was a really good talent at Arizona State. And obviously, the Patriots scouting, while drafting wide receivers hasn't been their forte in the past, still thought highly enough of him to spend a first-round pick on him. So maybe it is there. He's still young. I mean, I think it's at least worth thinking about if you can maybe not give up anything for him. That's the big thing.
It'll have to be on the right. I don't know what they're going to get for his services. I don't know what they're looking for. I mean, I guess a draft pick. So what does he command with those stats? Just 2 years going into year 3.
Take a 7th. So I mean, it's something like a 6th or 7th, and even then, it's almost like if you're going to get him, you're doing it because you're doing them a favor by just getting rid of him.
Yeah. So the NBA Finals, as we wrap this up, getting ready to begin. I saw where Giannis has been upgraded to questionable, so maybe he's ready for Game 1.
Malik Andrews reported today that he has been receiving around-the-clock treatment on that knee and that he is working his way up to a game-time decision. So it could be a coin flip. I mean, I know the line has gone down a little bit in Milwaukee's favor from 6 to 5.5, but that'll be interesting. If he plays, obviously, it's going to be a really good series, and if you got him at 70%. But that's the big thing in this series. If he doesn't play, I think they could probably survive one game without him, but not more than that.
Who do you like? Who do you like in this series? Who do you think's going to win?
See, I said Milwaukee at the beginning of the playoffs to win the whole thing. And I want to stick to my guns there. Assuming Giannis is even at 75%, I think Milwaukee still wins. The defensive versatility is way too much. I think usually they figure teams out. They got 6 or 7 guys that can guard any position on the floor. And at the end of the day, when the possession's lower a little bit and the pace isn't fast, I think that's what's going to carry over. Could be wrong, but if Giannis doesn't play more than one game, Phoenix is winning. If Giannis plays all of them, then I like Milwaukee.
Interesting. All right. We'll see how it all plays out. That'll do it for our show today. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Continue to be safe. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We'll see you then.